Have you ever wanted a DIY overdrive that was so simple you had to remake it again and again and again? Well, today we're talking to our own personal oracle, and I know I speak for John when I say literally the oracle. It is, of course, Simon from JSA to talk about his simple overdrive. My co-host today,
John Mulholland, Space Wolf. Greetings and salutations on this Memorial Day weekend.
And I'm Simon from JSA Effect. Yeah, I'm Simon from JSA Effect Pedals, and it's bank holiday here because Memorial Day is not a thing this side of the pond.
Well, you have Remembrance Day.
We do. Oh, do you not have? Yeah, November. Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Okay,
just different
times. Yeah,
different.
Yeah,
different
okay.
times a year.
Fair.
So fair enough.
Cool.
Yeah, it's basically an excuse to have a day off.
Yeah.
So, how is everyone anyway? Who's in the chat today? Daniel Mincher first in. Hello, mate. How's it going? I've been trying to convince him to get a Captain X today. Hopefully he does.
Yeah, I've been rewatching. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been soldering. I've been rewatching all your podcasts and videos and stuff in the background. And when you were talking a while back about recording, like when you're recording guitar clips, you weren't super pleased with how it was sounding, and you wanted something. So are you doing? So is it guitar into pedals into amp into like the top into the captor, or are you just like pedals into the captor with impulse responses? Okay, yeah.
Oh, mate. So so it's guitar into pedal into amplifier into Captain X, out of Captain X into Sony's ZV-1 camera, and then from the camera, obviously, it goes straight to the.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Straight on there. So I can have two mics plugged in because I've got a little gizmo, so I can have the IRs as one mic and then my voice as another.
Nice.
I started a new thing coming out just this next video where instead of just playing a few licks and that's it, I'm actually going to like talk and say, this is what I'm doing. I'm turning this up. Why am I doing that? It sounds like this, rather than just like just playing and then not speaking type thing. Try and give people context. The reason why I haven't done this in the past is because my playing is terrible. And it's like, you absolute fucking hypocrite. How are you telling me what a pedal does when you can't even play? You know what I mean? So that's where I was coming from.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure when you were talking about it because I build a couple of things that are meant for that. Like if you're going guitar, pedal, and then straight into like straight into something with impulse responses built in. I make something that goes in between whatever the pedal is and that, so you kind of emulate like a tube preamp and like EQ stage.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's interesting. That may be exactly what Dan is actually looking for, funnily enough.
Well, that's so all of every video I make when I'm actually playing guitar, no, not every, but the majority of them have that. So it's kind of like guitar, whatever pedal I'm playing, and then it's what I call my warm preamp, which is so it's like it simulates like a tube front end and then like a fixed EQ and stuff. So you can push it. You know, if you're trying to push a solid state amp with a tube screamer, it doesn't sound great. But if you're pushing a tube amp with a tube screamer, it makes more sense. So it's to try and get more of that real world context.
Yeah. So I mix it up where, like, if I want something where I want, for example, I've just finished filming this, the Boogie. So it's like the dual rec pedal. Yeah. To demo this one, it's going into the Fender Showman because that's like there's no amp gain coming through whatsoever. You know, you have to turn it till the fuse is melting to get. You know what I mean? So you can either pedal, whereas normally I go into the V40 because that's like the best of both worlds. But something like a tube screamer is really good with the Filmo sound. So I like to mix it like that. But I get a lot of shit off people because I use a wiretap and it's digital. But obviously I run it through a transformer wired as an inductor.
So you get that pick-up sim and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same. Let's face it, it's not.
No, but it's like 90% of the way there, isn't it? It's not. It's only the roll up. It's like the roll off that's the difference. It's not so much the tone that's the difference.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And there's just no way. I've got some amazing guitarists who have recorded actual guitar playing on that thing rather than strumming a G chord and then made it in a ZZ Top song. It's
no.
You know, so yeah. What's everyone been up to anyway?
Just trying to stay busy for myself, and nice and English outside today. We have like clouds and fog and rain. So
same.
Yeah, same. I went to the beach today and absolutely.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Mike Rivers says building a Burns buzz around. Get in. I keep saying I'm going to do a video. But, yeah, I mean, I've got to show this while we're here. This is the pedal that Simon sent me. It couldn't be more down to like exactly what I would want. You know,
it's beautiful. I know, man. This is the one he sent me with the beautiful.
It's got all the bits inside as well.
Oh yeah, this is. I haven't cracked this open. I was going to do this live on the stream, just to see what's inside, because I was like, you know, once we get on the stream, I was like, that way.
Oh man, that's interesting.
It's like it's going to take a while.
Simon.
Well, it's going to take a while because they're massive screws as well. Like they go most of the way through. The enclosure is huge, and the screws go most of. No, I think that relative to like normal like Hammond screws, they're like twice the size. Yeah,
they're a little bit longer.
Yeah,
they're like half-inch.
Oh, we're losing John. Like.
Yeah. Well,
the reason why I didn't take the back off of this originally, as soon as I got it, I wanted to hear it and try and figure out what all the knobs did, and like see how close I came, and then through my guesses at Simon, and he told me I was close, but I had a few things wrong, and then
but then we were talking about that because one of the controls is, I mean, we'll go through it, but one of the controls is bass control, but it's from the Timmy pedal, and as with how the bass control works, it ends up changing the amount of gain as well, because it's part of the gain calculation. So yeah, because John was like, I'm pretty sure it's like a sustain control. I'm like, it is and it isn't. It's meant to be more low end, but it kind of does both. What do I write? Isn't the usual play again, but let's share?
Yeah.
No, it's like, what's in the box?
Oh yeah.
What's in the box? And that's exactly what I posted when I got it. I was like, what's in the box? Oh man.
In the pained voice of Brad Pitt.
What's in the box?
Yeah.
Oh, this is beautiful, mate.
I was going for G.
Oh man.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know. So Joe's was obviously all tropical fish. That was the goal of it. I think this is a bit of everything. I can't see it because we've talked about this before. I'm on my phone.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There you go. Solo layout.
Yeah, just a little bit of everything. And then the weird op amp. So it's any 5532. Everyone knows that. I know not everyone. Quite a common op amp is any 5532, and it turns out the Japanese, whatever that company is, JRC or NJM, depending. They made their own version of it. So that's the JRC 5532 double D. So it's like their high gain version of the 5532. Yeah, I think I had some other things in there to start with, but that was the one because I knew you play bass, and also I figured it'd go between guitar and bass. That was the one that didn't compress as much with the low end, whereas everything else gets a bit not flat, but like dull.
Yeah, in my bass tube screamer that I built, I used TL72.
Yeah, again because it's much more open and it doesn't compress. Is this Joe's internet just being shonky?
It might be.
Yeah,
he was having some issues, but it's one of those things where today it seems like everything's going wrong. My computer will not connect to Wi-Fi. It has never done this. I was spending half an hour before I got on with you guys trying to figure out my internet on my computer. It works everywhere else in the house on every other device, but my computer just, decided today it wanted a day off. And so I can't see anything in the chat. I see little tiny people on a phone screen. That's all I can see right now. So
I'm intrigued. I didn't realize I could see the chat. Can I? No. Okay. But yeah, we'll assume that Joe's on his way back.
He will be back.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
But the point was, so obviously you've seen yours. Yours are the 5-knob one, and then Joe's was the very simple 3-knob one. And the point of all of this is it's exactly the same variable layout. And and I've designed it in such a way that there's lots of things you can modify without having to like add rows and columns. You use the same layout and you get lots of different things. Because my version is boring because I just reuse an old enclosure.
Oh, cool.
But again,
I love the diagonals. I love, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that was from a builder pedal called the Little Treble Maker. And
I remember seeing pictures of that. Okay.
Yeah, it's essentially the tone control section from the Klon Sensor, but it's just the tone control. So it's none of the gain, none of the weird like magic diodes, none of that. It's just a clean boost. So it is like treble control and the gain recovery. And I've went through like a whole phase of adding different things. So this was originally a Little Treble Maker, but with bass and treble controls. And I really liked it until I've got a friend who's in a band that they're doing all right for themselves, and he's got 3 of the older Little Treble Makers, and he has one that we built without a foot switch, so it's always on right before his amp. His whole it's a massive pedal board. All of his sound goes through it constantly, and I helped him rebuild his board and set everything up again. And I was playing that older one and thinking, oh Christ, I prefer that to where it's come now. So it's kind of like you take 3 steps forward, and I've gone like 4 or 5 steps back with it now. I've come at the moment. It was on Reverb. You could buy it on Reverb, and I've taken it off because I think I'm going to lean into the 2-knob version again. But I need to figure out how to do just the aesthetics of it, really. So this was originally the LTM, the 3-knob one,
the 3-knob,
which is and which was why it was diagonal. So you got that kind of clonk KTR effect to it. And then the board itself on mine is boring intentionally. Again, it was to try a thing. Well, no, when we've said this before, that when you build things yourself with your gear and the parts you've got at hand, it will, if you gave the same parts to everyone, it would still sound different. But a lot of the premise for the Simple Drive was you could buy those like boxes on Amazon or eBay that have got 10 of each value of capacitor and whatever resistors.
Yeah, so the electronic experimenter kit, basically.
Exactly that. So, and most of those come with those green, like the green meanie Mylar capacitors.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's some designs that I've seen specify those capacitors specifically. Yeah. So
I don't know if this is one where over time they've changed and the older ones sound different to the newer ones. It's not ones; they're not caps I play around with that much, but there's definitely older pedals. So like the old Rats have a couple of them in, and if you change them, it seems to make a huge difference to the sound. But I'm not a massive fan of them, and I think mostly because I build kind of transparent overdrives. So I wanted to try this with stuff that you would get like in one of those kits. So it's just like the normal carbon resistors, carbon film, Mylar caps, and then electrolytic, and then all the ceramic caps as well, just to see how it sounded. So there's that one, and then there was Joe's, which is very similar to this, but with tropical fish. And then there's the one you've got, which takes design and kind of adds everything else back to it. Is he back?
There he is. He's back.
Fish. Yay!
That's how you summon Joe. All you need to do.
Tropical fish.
It's like Beetlejuice.
You say 3 times in the minute. I
appear. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Hang on. Right. So, shall I explain what this whole thing is then, and why we're here for this? I imagine we will get it. Every builder at some point will get it, where you'll get a message from people asking for tips and tricks, and for beginners, and particularly what pedal should I build first. And I've always said build an Electro Harmonix LPB1, super simple circuit.
Yep.
It's super versatile. You can throw it before things, after things, stack a few of them together, put diodes with it. So one of the most versatile utility pedals. The problem then comes is what's your second build? And this is where I really struggle. So my suggestion for a long time was a DOD 250, because again, it's a low parts count. It's op amp based, so you're not having to bias anything. But the problem is it needs a reverse log gain control, or it feels like it doesn't work properly. And then again, so people will jump for a tube screamer. We've said this before, a tube screamer seems like an easy one on paper. They're everywhere. But the problem is, again, you need a W taper for the tone control, or it feels almost broken, doesn't it? Because it's like nothing happens, and then right at the end,
and then suddenly it's there.
Yeah. And again, the Rangemaster is a great example. You think Rangemaster will be a lovely beginner project, but it's positive ground, which can be a pain if you're doing it off just like a normal schematic. And again, germanium transistors and biasing. It is a great project, and it's a great simple project, but it's once you've got a bit of knowledge, that's a great project.
Yeah,
it's not like a first or second build. So I
like,
wanted to, it's like a kind of 5th or 10th build kind of thing. Once you're comfortable
do something a little bit more sensible before you start getting into the rabbit hole of biasing transistors and all of that kind of thing, basically.
Yeah. Again, like fuzz face, I'm sure we've all fallen for it. Everyone thinks building a fuzz face is easy because it's 4 resistors, 2 transistors, and a couple of caps, but it's so hard to get right. And anyone that will have, if you're a beginner and you've built a fuzz face and it's not sounded right, you just assume that fuzz faces are bad, rather than knowing, well, I needed to rebias this, or these transistors are leaky, or stuff like that. So, a few years ago, I wanted to design something that could be like a 2nd or 3rd build, that once you know how to solder, and now here's something that's easy to build, a clean layout, uses off-the-shelf parts, and so nothing weird, nothing going to have to kind of hunt for or esoteric or anything. So the original one, actually, the very first one I did was an LPB1, but with a buffer before it. Because my only qualm with the LPB1 is it's got a resistor from the emitter to ground, which is 390 ohms, and it's a weird value. And it's not that you can't find it; it's a standard value.
Yeah.
But if you've just bought a kit of, like, as we were saying earlier, those like it's big electronics experiments kit, they won't have a 390 ohm resistor in it. So I made one. Yeah, I made one where I changed a couple of values, and put the gain control. Yeah, so rather than just having the volume control at the end, I had it between the buffer and the LPB1, so that it stayed cleaner, rather than being like max gain and you're just attenuating it. And then I did the first simple drive, which was a single op amp thing. And I've done a few others, like a couple of simple fuzzes and stuff like that. The ample drive as well. But this year, in a moment of manic depression, which is wonderful. That's not true. I don't recommend it to anyone. It's terrible. But yeah, I was kind of on this, as always happens, I was on that kind of manic spree. I went, right, now is the time to do another simple drive using a dual op amp, because it's not that single op amps aren't, they're easy to find, but they're not as common. A TL071 isn't as common as the TL072. You're more likely to see, you're more likely to see a dual op amp somewhere. So
and it's
why
becoming
not make
more
it?
and more the case. Like there are not that many single op amps that I'm seeing, in full size. If you find them, they're SMD.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But there's also lots of other cool op amps that you can swap out if you're doing dual. There's loads available.
Exactly.
Yeah, as long as the pinouts work. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it with the single op amps. There's always the risk the pinouts don't work.
Yeah.
And as you say, there's a very limited number really now. Once you get like an TL071, an LM741, and then you get into things like the LM308, which are just fakes. The OP07. Again, suddenly you get into this kind of weird rabbit hole where there's a lot of fakes, and they've got the weird compensation caps, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Except for the one that I'm sending to Joe eventually.
Oh, nice.
I sent you one too, Simon.
I was about to say mine's in alright, actually. I love it. After you did the thing with the McPherson, is it Waylon McPherson? Or Wayne McPherson?
It is. I think it's
Waylon.
Yeah, because I used to get it wrong. I called him. I called him Wayne, and I kept thinking, why am I calling him that? But
Wayne McPherson sounds like a more reasonable name than Waylon McPherson.
It's less rock and roll, though.
Then that's true.
Yeah, it's true. It's more like country and western star. Wayne.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Waylon is too. I mean, Waylon Jennings, but he's an outlaw.
Do you know what?
So.
I've got to say, I work with a guy who's called Wayne John. Or I did in my last job.
Oh wow!
And he called. He's mad. He's off his head. He said he's that annoyed with people getting his name the wrong way round that he called his kid Lennon. So then it could happen to him too.
Amazing. To be fair,
I hear the Shel Silverstein song, "A Boy Named Sue."
Yeah. Well, my name's Simon Andrews, so for a lot of my life, I was called Andrew. Especially because when you're on a register, obviously, and it's all alphabetical, you're top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So I was called Andrew for a long time. Still am every now and then.
I butcher my class list so bad. I got a lot of guys and girls coming from the colonies, like the Caribbean and Africa and stuff.
Oh yeah,
and I am just like, sometimes they're like, "Bless you, Chief," and like, "No, I was trying to say your name. I'm really sorry. I just can't." I'm so bad. And the thing is, they're all good people, so they have a laugh about it. Like, yeah, we're used to it. But my word.
I made the rookie mistake with one of my first teaching groups. There was I was introduced to the student as Sheep, but it wasn't just I was introduced to him. Everyone, like every member of staff, called him Sheep. And the first time I did a register, I got to a name and I read it and I kind of looked around and went, "Who the hell's this?" And he put his hand up and he went, "Oh, that's me." And it's like, of course, Sheep isn't your real name. Of course it isn't. But yeah, because everyone called him, like as I said, everyone called him that. Yeah.
Was his real name Sean?
No, his real name was David. Yeah, it was David. And I don't know how they got Sheep, but then again, I've got a friend.
There's got to be a story behind that. Man.
Probably. I know. Well, I've got a friend called Ferret as well, who's one of my pedal gurus.
I know some people named Goblin. Actually know.
Well, there's a guy who worked for me on my last ship called Fabio, and for the longest time I was like, Fabio this, Fabio that, and I stopped him and said, "Mate, you're English," and he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Why did he call you Fabio?" He said, "Fat albino bastard in overalls," because he's like, "That's an acronym." Wears overalls for living. I was like, "Where did they come up with that?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate,
No. Yeah. So dual op amp, and I wanted to make an overdrive because everyone likes an overdrive. It's a nice, again, simple thing. All off the shelf parts, which was what's Reeve saying?
Did someone mention Wayne King? Actually, mate, in the Navy, if your second name's King, you get called Wan. So that's a nickname. Anyone with the second name King is Wan King.
Or Wayne King.
And same if your second name's K as well. If your second name's K-E-R-R-K.
I was in a band with a guy named JJ Butts. Butts. That was his real last name.
That's an unfortunate name.
And he said, "I'm so glad my dad didn't name me Seymour."
So I think that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
He said he might name a son that if he ever had one. So we'll see.
That's why the guy I work with, Wayne, that's why I was so impressed with him, because he was like, "No, I am calling my kid Lennon. He can suffer this too." Like,
yeah. Sorry. So dual op amp, overdrive. I want it to be a nice, clean, simple layout. So there's lots of things I see on Varo that over the years I've come to detest. One of the big ones is double links. Like, I really struggle with double links.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the problem is if you use small diode legs, so not like 1M4001s, just like a normal like 1N914, those legs,
mm-hmm.
two of those will fit in a hole perfectly, no problem, as you make a double link. But if you're just using resistor legs, they don't quite fit in a hole together and so you have to make the hole a bit bigger, and it's like a whole thing. So I try desperately not to put double links. Also, and I don't know if it's a real thing or if it was something that's at some point I was having trouble with noise in builds. And in fact, Ferret, one of my pedal gurus, suggested having 9-volt and ground at least one row of variable apart.
Really?
Yeah. And
That
to be
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've had a bit. In fact, it was a build very recently where I had the input and the output right next to each other, and I had so many problems with crosstalk because once you get there's so much gain on it. Once the volume was up, it was essentially feeding back into itself. And yeah, so that was just purely a layout issue.
Mm-hmm.
So
see, you've got me now thinking I might do a buzz bar in my pedals, so you just run the earth or the ground straight up, and connect to like a ring main type thing. No, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I remember loads of people talking about star ground, which when they explained it, I was like, that makes sense. But I think I follow the same thing as star ground. If something goes to ground, it only goes to ground once. So, if it's like you go from your jack to there, so you're not at no point do you make a loop because that's where you get ground loops from. Yeah. So no double links, making sure 9-volt and ground are at least a row apart, making it so there's space for you to get capacitors next to each other. So and making a board so that if you wanted to modify it, there was lots of scope to do so without having to make the board bigger or redraw it. And again, we'll come to when we go to John's, it misses a cut. But if we go to, so shall we? Have you got the files, Joe?
Yeah, this is going to be an ask. Which one am I looking at, mate?
So on the schematics, there's one that's just Simple Drive 2025. Please.
Oh man, I think I might actually achieve this.
Yeah, because there's three. There's the box, and then there's the Hello Sailor version, which has one difference, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Let me see.
Oh, and the other thing too that I think we should mention is you're going to be doing like an Instagram thing on this too, aren't you? Like a So that's up already. Yeah. So if you go on my Instagram already, it's already posted there. I've also put it all in a Dropbox folder. So the link in my bio on Instagram, and it literally says, the files, the schematic and layouts for all these. Click on that, and it will take you to a Dropbox file where you can download them for free. I imagine there'll be questions. And if people want to message me, feel free to do so with questions. Hopefully, we'll answer as many as we can here. And we'll kind of look at again like the common changes and
Simple Drive 2025. Well, that's a first for me.
Yeah. Bang on. Thank you, man. So we'll do the let's look at the schematic and then we'll go through the layout. But I mean, the schematic, I fear this will take a long time. I apologize profusely because I'm dull and I talk about things too much. But
mate, we love how deep you go into this sort of stuff that you're talking about.
That's why we're here being quiet.
Okay. Let's go from the start then. So let's go left to right. I think that's the other thing. If people don't know how to read schematics, for the most part, the signal goes left to right and voltage goes top to bottom. So 9-volt at top and going down to ground. So input R1 is a 1 meg pull down resistor. I know Joe's made a video about this, talking about this. If you're not sure what that does, it's if you've got a mechanical foot switch, as it physically clicks, because there's no signal hitting if there's nothing between the foot switch and the capacitor, it takes a second or so not a second, but it takes time for the capacitor to physically fill, and it can cause a very audible pop on your signal. So R1, 1 meg resistor to ground, helps mitigate that. It's not perfect. You might still have problems depending on how your wiring and everything else is, but 1 meg pull down resistor for R1. This is one where people talk about using like 2M2 and larger resistors as well.
I've even seen them use smaller resistors. I've seen people use 100K for a pull down resistor, and that it just really depends on what kind of capacitance you have to charge back up. I think the larger resistors work better with higher value capacitors mainly.
Yeah. And it depends what the rest of the circuit is as well. Because like if you use a 2M2 pull down resistor on a fuzz, it can cause a lot of problems with roll off and stuff. So 1M is quite safe, no messing around. And as I said, the whole point with all of these values should be in you buy a box off Amazon or eBay with 10 of each resistor. These should all be there because they're standard values. So yeah, R1 pull down, R2 this 1K in series with the signal. This is a weird one. It doesn't need to be there. You'll see lots of circuits where it goes straight from that pull down into C1. I do this just by habit now, and it's to help stop interference going into the circuit. So having a bit of resistance on the input helps cut down, if you get like radio frequencies or any kind of stray stuff like that, in theory, it should help tame that. Again, these are, like I said, with the power thing where I've got them a row apart. I don't know if you need this, but I do it by habit now, and I've never had problems with kind of radio interference or noise. So
I think it feels different to play. So on my Range Masters, I do like a 100k pop between the input and the actual pedal, if you like, because there's transformer circuits in there. But when you dial it almost, just put 1k of resistance in the circuit, you can feel it under your fingers. I think. I don't know whether that's just maybe in my head because I'm twisting a knob, but I can definitely feel it. I think it's to know what people think.
I think this is one of those differences between kind of op amps and transistors, because I completely, like on a fuzz or a fuzz or a range master, you're completely right. You totally feel it because you're adding kind of resistance with that kind of single or bootstrap transistor. Op amps are, by their nature, much less fussy about things. In the same way, so when we get to R3, but yeah, there's lots of things that they are much less fussy about. Because we talked about when we did the tube screamer thing, the simple screamer that I did, and I left the buffers in for that. And I'm a big fan of buffers. I think they're useful, but for this I've taken them out, and so having that having that 1K in series, just helps keeps a bit of resistance on the front of the signal. You might be able to jump it. You may not need. It's not essential, but I find it helpful. And as I said, by default, I kind of do it just to keep noise down, basically. Right, C1 input capacitor. Again, this is one where when we talk about transistor circuits and fuzz, again, like an input cap is where so much changes. And again, on a range master, you make it bigger, you make it smaller, you completely change from treble boost to kind of full range boost to whatever. Op amps are much less fussy. That could go down to 10N and you wouldn't hear a huge difference. You could go up, once you get up to about kind of 470 microfarad, there is a minor difference if you're playing bass. But as a guitarist, you can go from kind of 10 nanofarads to like 470 nanofarads and not really have a huge difference. But again, we talk about this. It's like a default thing on the internet. If you want more bass, you make an input capacitor larger. And that's definitely true for fuzzes or transistor-based things. Much less true for op-amp-based circuits. And we'll come to why in a second, actually. But yeah, so we're almost at the op-amp. R3 is a bias resistor, and this is a weird one. And I've got a whiteboard to try and draw this because all of this comes back to what am I doing? I've got this in my hand. I don't know why. So let's see if old technology works.
Analog.
So, yeah.
Love it.
This is from my days when I was a functional member of society and a teacher. Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. It's like the future today. But it doesn't want to stay still, does it? Oh, no, it does. Okay, so op amps. When I know Joe's talked about this. Audio signals are a sine wave, and they kind of go like that as they pass through. With most circuits, when we're talking about guitar pedals, we are talking about using power between two extremes. So we're normally going between +9 and ground, which is 0 volts. Op amps work on this premise of having a positive and a negative rail. So on a dual op amp, pin 4 is negative. It's not ground, it's negative. It's worth remembering that. And pin 8 usually is positive. And again, it's not necessarily 9 volt, it's just positive and negative. When your signal's coming through, as you're amplifying it, if you amplify the signal above this, it will start to clip. And so your maximum values are plus 9 volt and plus 9 volt and 0. That's all good and well, but to help an op amp know where this headroom is, you need to tell it where the middle point is. And that sounds so weird, but you need to say, right, this is the middle. And to do that, we use R3. So this is a resistor between the non-inverting input of the op amp, which is the positive signal, and VREF. So we create, I don't know how well this all comes across.
It looks great.
Yeah.
So we need to create. So this is going to be exactly half. So this needs to be 4. This needs to be 4.5 volts. So that we're telling the op amp when the sine wave is positive, it's going between 4.5 volts and 9 volt. When the sine wave is negative, it's between 4.5 volts and 0 volts. So when we talk about headroom, it's that distance. So on a 9 volt op amp circuit, your headroom is 4.5 volts. And we create this with a simple circuit, which is 2 resistors and a capacitor. So 9 volt at the top, and then equal value resistors. In this case, it's 10k and 10k. And that point in the middle is going to be exactly half. That's ground. So that gives you 4.5 volts. So on the schematic, all that stuff in the bottom left corner, where it says like V plus, V ref and stuff, that's this bit. This is creating a reference voltage of 4.5 volts. And R3 connects between the op amp and this reference voltage to tell the op amp where halfway is, basically. This sounds like I'm talking a lot, and I am, but it becomes important later, because one of the tricks we're going to do, and one of the tricks on Joe's version of the pedal, is around altering this headroom to alter where it clips.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something that I've nicked from the Timmy, and the Lightspeed uses it, and I'm sure the pedals do it. But yeah, you can do some witchcraft with this. So
I've got a few questions, mate, and I'm sure people are burning to ask them. First of all, that's the best explanation of biasing an op amp that I've ever heard. That's fantastic. You should really be doing
definitely like gave me a whole bunch of ideas. Like
it's like I was a music tech teacher for a decade or something.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And also, I've got a question.
Yep.
If we make that sine wave now asymmetrical by moving the center point, what's that do to the signal? That
is exactly what we're going to do later, and we will talk about it. And
there you go.
It's going to be about how we clip things. So we talk about asymmetrical. We use asymmetrical diodes to clip things asymmetrically. But yeah, if we move this center point, we can also reduce the headroom in one direction or the other, so it will clip sooner. So that's what we're going to talk about in a bit.
Before we move on, we've got a few extra bits in. So James Cuff says hello mate, how's it going? Ruben says hello, and then we've also had mate, this guy has done the best website ever. He did like a review of one of my videos. I'll link you to it. It's all in foreign, which is quite confusing, but he's also done it in English. Fantastic. He's going to be another great content creator coming soon. But more importantly, Ed Savage has got a question for you. He says, wouldn't the amount of bass come in relationship between C1 and R3, or in a relationship between C1 and R3?
So then again, this is one that comes up a lot. And on paper, yes. In practice, no. The differences are they're so small that it's not a huge thing. Yes, technically that makes a filter. Technically that makes a which way around is it? High pass filter, so low cut. But the values are so big for R3 that it very rarely makes a difference. In my experience, again, I might be wrong. I've seen it on paper, people talk about it, but in practice, I've never heard a noticeable difference. I do also need to say why R3 is that value. That's the other thing with this, because that changes depend. So no, John's ended up being the same. When we talk about input impedance,
Okay, yeah, it is.
And there you go. Mike is his name. This isn't another one like sheep, is it? Or one of them, nicknames. Sorry, mate, if you missed that earlier.
No. Yeah, so op amps come in a couple of different flavors. If you're not sure what an op amp is, it's a circuit. It is a full circuit made up of probably 20 or 30 transistors each to form a operational amplifier circuit. And the type of transistors they use change. So sometimes it's BJT transistors, sometimes it's JFETs, sometimes it's a mixture of both. There are MOSFET ones, but that goes into quite different chips in the end. So when we think about buffers and we think about single transistor buffers, JFETs can handle and expect a much higher input impedance than BJTs. BJTs expect and handle a much lower input impedance. Because we've not got the buffers on the circuit, we have to assume that if you were to plug a guitar straight into the pedal, so there's nothing between the guitar and the pedal, we have to assume the input impedance is going to be high. So R3, again, it's not really the case, but it's just a good example, a good practice to set it for the highest input impedance it would expect. So the op amp I've used is the JRC 4558. It's a very standard op amp. It's a BJT based op amp. And because it's BJT based, it's expecting or works best around the kind of 500K impedance. So that R3 resistor is acting as, it's doing two things. It's kind of telling the op amp what impedance it's expecting. And it's also helping to tell the op amp where the middle point between the swings is for its max before clipping, basically. Its maximum headroom. Fucking hell, I'm so out of breath. This is what happens when you're made wrong. Are there any questions or any more questions?
There's none come through in the chat yet, but if anyone has questions, please just fire them through and I'll try and catch them as we go.
Cool. So if this was a TL072, R3 wouldn't go up to 1 meg. TL072, I think the I think that whole series, like the 072, 6282, are all JFET based, or at least JFET input stages. And JFET, as again, if you've ever built a JFET buffer as a standalone transistor, wants a higher input impedance, so that would go up to 1 meg. Mm-hmm. And again, you could argue, like whoever mentioned it before, that the relationship between C1 and R3 acts as a filter and will so change the base. Maybe I'm wrong, but as I've seen it on paper, but I've seen people talk about it, but I've never had a noticeable difference in practice with it.
There's a video there somewhere, isn't there, of plugging in different values and showing what actually happens in the real world, if you like, compared to on paper. That'd be interesting.
Well, it's like, again, it's like, no, it's not like that at all. I was going to say it's like a power filtering, where as long as you've got a large enough capacitor and a smallish value resistor, it does a good job. It does the job it needs to do.
So Ed Savage again says, that's great. A great tip with the impedance. Could it be achieved with a larger values for R11 and R12?
No. So R11 and R12 are purely a voltage divider. And the larger you make those values, the more noise you introduce, and also because of the spec. So if you've got a 1 meg resistor that is 1% tolerance, that's a much bigger swing between 1 meg and 900,000 than like a 10k resistor. So they are. I can't remember where I read it. It's probably at AMZ or something. But they reckon that 10k is the lowest value you can use before you get noise going the other way. So if you go too low for those values, you introduce noise, and if you go too large, you introduce noise and you start to have this 4.5 volt isn't exactly 4.5 volt. You start to kind of swing it either way.
Okay.
I see. Yeah.
Yep. And this sounds weird as well. And this is one I learned the hard way. So C8 on the schematic, but it's this capacitor here. This is C8. Is a filter capacitor. So it's like on your normal power filtering, you've got a capacitor. So this is filtering this 4.5 volt basically. If you don't have that capacitor at all, something very weird happens, and this might be what he's talking about. So when Justin Drawbridge was on, and you were talking about the Dumble style pedal, and it uses like a JFET mu amp, one of those biases to this. In the Vertex version, he has the capacitor, so it's a fixed 4.5 volt. So it looks like it's biasing perfectly to 4.5 volt. In the original Jack Orman version, he doesn't, and it ends up like a push-pull thing. So as voltage comes through, it does swing this. So if you've not got the capacitor, the different input impedance will start to drag this value down, basically. So C8 as a value for this kind of thing as a voltage divider, and for creating, it's called VREF because it's a reference voltage, basically. But yeah, the capacitor that's going to ground here is keeping that steady at 4.5 volt. That's its job. It doesn't need to be. I've got it at 100U. I just always do the same. I have the same values for 9 volt and VREF. But anything over 10U, anything over 10U will do the job, really.
What about like? Sorry, mate. A quick question. What about something with like a high ESR or a bit of leakage on it? Would it be easy to use your not defective caps, but your old electrolytics that are on the way out?
Position? As long as they work, basically, that's what their job is. They're creating filters. So, as long as the capacitor physically works as a blocking capacitor, you can use them there.
Oh, that's cool. So Ed says that he's built a couple of pedals that have a bypass cap on the 4.5 volts, and he's going to have a look and see what difference it makes. Perfect.
That don't have, yeah. If you don't have that cap, it should start to do weird things. This is where if you change those values, it starts kind of acting like a push-pull, basically.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so, my apologies. I do feel like this does feel like being a teacher again, actually, but with less swearing.
less swearing and less.
Just give it time. Just give it time.
I worked in Mansfield. And Worksop. So.
Then you probably won't hear as much swearing as you did there.
No,
my teachers used to let me draw it on the table and roll spliffs in the back of the class as long as I wasn't talking.
Oh.
So I was the worst student in the world.
Oh yeah. I fucking hate that about schools. I still hate that about schools. It's
I was that kid that I'd go in and sit down and he'd say, "Get out." I'm like, "What? I haven't done anything yet." Like, we're not even entertaining it. Get out.
Yeah. That started happening with my stepsister's son. And then he discovered woodworking. He got to secondary school, discovered woodworking, and he's become not quite a model student, but suddenly he's like, yes, this is what I should have always been doing. I love this.
That's class.
Yeah, and I think that's true for all of us, isn't it? Once you find the thing you love, where your interests are, it makes such a big difference to how you learn. Like such a big difference.
It does. It doesn't seem like it's a chore anymore. It's just like you're thirsty for it, and you just want to know everything you can about the subject. So
exactly that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I apologize. This section is the bulk of the circuit, and we covered this when we did the Tube Screamer. So I apologize if I'm going over things again. So this first op amp, so IC1, and it says half, so it's dual op amp, and we're using the first half of that dual op amp. This is the main gain stage. So where do we start? Let's just work up. So C2, we've talked about before when we talked about the Tube Screamer. This is what I call a smoothing cap. It's a low pass filter. Because I call it cut. So in my head, it's high cut. As this circuit amplifies, because it's distorting, distortion physically creates extra harmonics. So when you get distortion, you physically get more sound. It's why people say that vinyl sounds better than other mediums, because when vinyl distorts, there is physically more sound. And we all know that more louder equals better, basically.
It does.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The problem is these harmonics are very high frequencies because it's related to whatever the pitches are. So if you left them untamed, they can very quickly get out of control. And because you're feeding it back into itself,
Oscillation.
Yeah, exactly that. So C2 in this is to cut down, to stop it oscillating, as a preventive measure, but also to tame those very high frequencies. It's one of those like audio terms where people say like ice pick or like brittle and brash treble.
The stuff that just hits you like in the wrong place in the frontal lobe. Where you're like, ow!
Like ear piercing, like horrible brash. Yeah. This value can be anywhere from it depends on what you want to do with it. You could, because of this hasn't got a huge amount of gain really. If you had that as 10 picofarad, or any, just keep going up. If you want the circuit to be brighter, make that value smaller. If you want the circuit to be darker, make that value larger. That almost rhymed. That was weird. Okay, we'll come back to the diodes in a second. Then we've got the gain pot and a resistor next to it, R4. And as you can see, that's directly in the feedback loop. So that's going between the output of IC1 and it's going back into the inverting input, which is the negative sign. We then have, off that inverting input as well, we have R5 and C3. And these are going to be really important. And this is where most of the mods and most of the changes come. So when we're talking about op-amp circuits, if you want more or less bass, it's those two values. I'm pointing at my screen. You can't see what I'm pointing at. Why am I pointing? But these two values this is like the gold. Like if you want more bass or more gain or less bass, these are the values you attack rather than the input capacitor.
Yeah.
Sorry, turning around. So, math space time. Gain, this is a non-inverting op-amp stage, and gain is calculated as essentially the gain pot plus R4. So, R4 determines the minimum gain. When the gain pot is turned all the way left, this obviously would become 0, and then that would become 10k. So that's going to be at minimum, there'll always be 10k's worth of resistance in the feedback loop. And then if it's at max, in this case, this would be 1 million, and this would still be 10k, and they'd add together. Okay, so gain is calculated as. I should have found a better pen. This is just messy. In a non-inverting op-amp.
Looks fine on the screen, mate.
Okay. Gain is calculated as gain pot, so the things in the feedback loop divided by things from the non-inverting input to ground or VREF. In this case, VREF, so R5 basically. Plus 1. That's your gain calculation. And it sounds, when I did some electronics university as part of my course, and resistance blew my mind. I couldn't get it. And doing the pedal stuff suddenly it starts to make sense. And it's basically because you have to do it as actual values. So, if it's 1 meg, you have to do the calculation as 1 million plus 10,000 divided by 4,700. So in this case, as I said, if we had this as 0 when the gain pot's fully left, this is 10k. And this is 4k7, 10k over that's 2. So at minimum gain, it's about 3 times the volume. So it's amplifying the signals 3 times essentially. Then at maximum gain, I'm not going to try and do that maths in my head, but it's much bigger than that, basically. Much bigger than that. But at maximum gain, it would be 1 million. Plus 10k, so max gain is, if anybody wants, has anyone got their calculator to hand? Because mine's on my phone now.
You're talking to the guy that wouldn't even be able to do it on his calculator.
Oh no, I've got it. I've got it. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 million plus equals. I forgot that I had my laptop. This is like the future. Divided by 4.
See, what I would is just ask ChatGPT. That's so lazy. That would have been my go-to.
215. So there we go. We're at minimum gain. So when the gain pot's fully left, it's amplifying the signals 3 times. At maximum gain, it's 215 times. Again, there's a lot of things we do here that end up changing this, but that's how you work it out, basically. If you ever want to do these calculations, God forbid, that's what it is. Yes, where are we going from here? Shall we do the dark? No, let's do these, altering these quickly. So if you wanted more gain, there's a couple of ways you could attack this. If you wanted more gain, you can either make this larger, you can make this larger. So anything above the line, you could make larger, and you would get more gain. Anything, so up, and anything, or you can make anything below the line smaller, and you get more gain. So if you made R5 2K2, for example, let's see what that does to the calculation. But it will be a lot. Okay, let's just do 1 million divided by 2200 equals. Yeah, suddenly, if you make this 2.5K rather than 4K7, your maximum gain becomes 454, which is, again, essentially twice this. This is what I was talking about when we did the tube screamer thing. A lot of pedal maths, or the pedal maths I do, is halving or doubling things. And once you start to think of it in that way, rather than having to kind of do formulas and all this nonsense, and it is nonsense, it becomes much quicker and you can do things in your head. There's, most values will have a half or a double value. So yeah, if you wanted more gain, you make one of the top things bigger. So either that minimum gain resistor, which is R4, or the pot itself, or you make anything below the line smaller. So R5 becomes smaller. There is a caveat with this, and this is where we're talking about, apologies, I imagine my volume drops as I move away from the microphone. So please don't fall down. You're doing so well. Come on board, you can do it.
At least it's you having a technical failure and not me.
Yeah, it's not even good technology, it's like ancient technology. So R5 and C3 form a high pass filter. And as I said, this is where if you want more or less bass, these are the values you attack. Now, I'm not going to try and do the maths for this. I use a calculator app on my phone. I think if you literally Google low pass filter calculator or a high pass filter calculator, it will come up. And I just
write it in ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, just write it into ChatGPT and it will do the maths for you. But C3 is the big one here. So if you make C3 larger, you will get more bass. So I'm going to write that down. That seems important, Simon. C3 larger is more bass, and smaller is less bass. There we go. That seems important. The problem with this is it's relative to, so it goes with R5. So they're not in isolation. If you're changing one, you're affecting the other here. So like we were just saying about the gain calculation, where if you make R5 smaller, you get more gain. If you made, well, again, let's do my double and half thing. If you made C3, which is currently 47 nanofarad, or 0.4, 0.047 or 473, depending on how you read capacitors. If you double that to roughly 100 NF, you would have R5 as 4K7 and C3 as 100 NF. So you've essentially doubled this value, and that will then affect the gain as well. So if you wanted to try and from a gain point of view, if you're just changing C3 for the base values, fine, but it will affect it. If you're changing R5 for a gain point of view, so I appreciate I just went around in circles there. If you're changing R5 to make it lower to get more gain, you need to change R3 as well to compensate if you want the same amount of bass.
Ah, yeah.
That's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, because otherwise it chokes it.
Yes.
Why did you settle where you settled then, mate? What was the thinking behind it? What was it that you were hearing?
With those values?
Yeah.
Tube Screamer. That's
you just went straight.
Yeah. This is the most common turnover. This gives you a turnover frequency of 720 hertz, which is, you'll see this combination of 4K7 and 47N across so many circuits in non-inverting op-amp stages. They'll be everywhere. Because it tightens up the bass nicely. It also gives you a nice amount of gain, and it's become so standard that I think the majority of drives, if you looked at the schematics from the last 40-50 years, will probably have something that, if not that exact value, they'll have. This is what we're talking about. They'll have doubles or halves of it. So if this is 47N and 4K7, which is our kind of stock value, if we half this, which will be roughly 2K2, to get more gain, we've now got 2K2 and 47, and that will cut a lot more bass, because we'll make this smaller. It starts to, as it goes into the calculation, so you get half the amount of bass. To compensate, if you double that as well, so this is what I was saying. If you half one, you double the other to get the same amount of bass. In this instance, we're changing the amount of gain, but we're keeping the low end the same. So when people come to modify this circuit, which I hope they do, this is where I'd always suggest people to start with C3 and R5. If you want more bass, make C3 larger. If you want less bass, make it smaller. You can go up to huge values with this. You can make C3 1 microfarad. It's for like a massive amount of low end, so it's not cutting anything. If you want more gain, finding a pot larger than 1 meg is hard. So making R5 smaller makes sense. And as I said, if you're making R5 smaller to change the amount of gain, and you liked how it sounded originally, then you would need to compensate by changing C3. And this is with the simple screamer. This is where I go, and I keep doing this. So we've gone from 4K7 and 47 to 2K2 and 100. So we've halved one, doubled the other. But you don't need to stop there. You can keep going. So again, if you then went to 1K, you've halved this again. So you double it. You double the bass again. So 1K and 220 NF will give all of these will give you the same bass response. There you go. All three of these will give you the same amount of bass, but completely different gains. And so this is the trick you see a lot. Now, things like the full-tone OCD, a lot of the Marshall in a box, like Blues Breaker, Governor, stuff like that, you will see one of these three combinations, because as that 720 hertz cutoff has become so standard for cutting bass, it's mostly about changing the gains. So it's always, not always, it's easier to think about it from doing maths in your head. You half one, you double the other.
I used that same approach after we did our Tube Screamer podcast. Gosh, almost a year ago now. It's hard to believe. But yeah, but I used that same concept after you described that. to help me figure out how to design the boot face, because one of my problems with it was when I turned that transistor around, I lost all the gain, but I heard really cool things that could be done with it. So I started doing that, and as soon as I doubled something, I would have something somewhere else, and that's how those values ended up where they were, was just by that basic precept that you had.
Yeah. The double and halving thing, I do it a lot, and if people go back to that Tube Screamer one and take the Tube Screamer schematic, put it up against my simple Screamer, and start doing this math, you'll very quickly realize that's all I've done through the entire circuit. So anytime there's a filter, I've halved one and doubled the other. I might have done it a couple of times like this. I've doubled it, halved it, doubled it and halved it again, doubled it and halved it again, doubled it. You keep going. Because then the next would be like 470 ohm and 470 NF, which again, you see the OVD one has that as its gain calculation. And these all give the same bass response, but they will change the gain. Sorry, the problem is I have submarine lungs, so I'm running out of breath. Are there any questions?
We have got a few things in, but not particularly questions. So
okay.
Ruben says that he grew up not liking op amps because he didn't understand them, and you make them sound easy. Completely agree, mate. He also goes into maths, which is really hard and blows my mind. Ed Savage said sometimes you see fancy stuff in the R5C3 area, such as the Proco Rat, parallel chains and whatnot.
I don't want to say he's getting ahead of himself, but he's getting ahead of himself because that comes later. But yeah, we do that. We'll cover that.
And we've got Matthew Doon in saying greetings, lads. Hello, mate. How's it going? Good to have you with us. Yeah, and that's where we're up to, mate.
Nice. Okay, so before we move on, then so before we move directly on from this, as I said, R4 is your minimum gain, and this is one I change in the Tube Screamer a lot. So this is when you've got the gain control fully left or counterclockwise or however you think of it. How much distortion will there be? I'm a big fan of having virtually no distortion, so that as you turn it up, you're only increasing gain. The Tube Screamer stock has it so that even when you turn it on and that's at 0, there is still some distortion. So this is a nice place to play around with as well. If you want more minimum gain, you make that value larger. If you want less minimum gain, you can make it smaller. Try if you wanted minimum gain at 0 or as close to, you could match it to R5 basically. That's what I do in a lot of things. So whatever R5 is, you make R4. And that way, when the pot's at that fully left, your gain calculation works out as 2.
So I think I'm hearing this in the Tamora mod Tube Screamer. I've got the silver version. It's great. Well, the silver plate version, whatever. And it feels like there's more gain in there, way more than I would use, even at minimum setting.
There is. So in that, on the original Tube Screamer, that's 51k. The Tamora mod makes it 82k. So it's a noticeable jump.
It doesn't sound as good to me. Since you sent me the Tube Screamer, you sent me, it's come off my board.
To be fair, they are very different circuits. I've got the original, the Apex one, which was like the Tamora mod, but made by Maxon. And then I very recently got the hand-wired V2, which has that. So it's essentially the Tamora mod and the extra 6 dB boost at the end. Which, spoiler alert, it's a super hard on at the end of the pedal.
Wait there, let's have a look. I think I've got that pedal.
Yeah, the big green box.
Mine's definitely different.
Okay. Right. Oh, I've just realised I've got this.
It's got the annoying plug thing on it. The audio plug. Yeah. But this is basically it. I tell you what. It looks amazing. It looks the part because it looks like a Tube Screamer with a soft touch foot switch on. It's cool. However, way too much gain. You don't need that much gain in it. Even with the gain right the way down, it's too much.
There's a guy in LA that I've built a bunch of pedals for, and I'm still building pedals for, and one of those is the Tube Screamer. And he is constantly asking for more gain. So at the moment, the last one I sent him had that minimum gain as 150k. So
wow,
and to me it's bonkers. I think it's too much, but he's like, no, that's great. gives it so I can turn it on and I've got gain. And so it's
I use it like a boost though to shape the sound. So maybe there's different applications.
Yeah, same. That's how I use it. But I think he's one of those guys with like a big Marshall amp that's already driving, and he uses it just to add like an extra layer of grit on top of it, and plays a lot with his guitar's volume control. So, so he can kind of have it almost like everything dimed, and then it's all off the volume and tone controls for shaping it. Fucking hell. This is why I don't teach anymore. Okay. Diodes, soft clipping diodes. Apologies for my droning voice, which is getting weaker as we go on. But for those
still
that
better than my maths teacher in high school, man. I'll tell you, he had a monotone. Monotone, and I had class 1 year that I had him. It was right after lunch, and he would deliver a lecture. And by the end of class, there were like maybe 3 or 4 people left awake.
He delivered psychoacoustics and digital electronics, which is a dull subject anyway. But when he was lecturing, it was monotone. But the funniest thing was, I had a tutorial with him one day, and I'd only ever talked to him in lectures or seen him in lectures. And then when I actually spoke to him outside of lecture, really was charismatic, and his voice went up and down, like it's very sing-songy voice. It was just surreal. Yeah, it's like, so you're in monotone when you're lecturing, but you're actually a very flamboyant person when you're not teaching.
You have to wonder if like he sat through that many lectures that were done in that same inflection, and he thought, well, this must be how it's done.
Yeah, so. I think it's exactly that. Okay, so there are 2 types of clipping that we often talk about. There's soft clipping and hard clipping. Hard clipping, so I'm just trying to think how best to draw it. Hard clipping takes your signal, which is doing this, and does diodes normally to ground or a virtual ground, and literally chops your signal so that it's clipping, so it's turning your sine wave into more of a square wave. As I said, hard clipping is things like, I fucking hate this, because everyone says hard clipping is equals distortion. And you go, yeah, but the clon's hard clipping. And in the same way, people say, oh, soft clipping's overdrive, but the big muff's soft clipping. So there's no kind of, it's just a different way to do it. But yeah, the hard clipping, it takes an already amplified signal and chops off, so limits. Yeah, that's it. It's like a hard limiter where it chops off the signal and dumps it to ground, basically. So you get this kind of square wave. Soft clipping does something completely different. And this, I kind of wanted to do this with a bigger board so I could keep this up. But let's go back to our headroom. So this is our op amp with 4.5 volts. So this is our middle. And we've got a lovely signal that can maximum, it can swing between a positive of 9 volt and here. So it's 4.5 volts headroom. Soft clipping limits this headroom. So whereas the other one is taking an already amplified signal and chopping it down, with soft clipping, we are essentially reducing this headroom. So if we so here we've got diodes in the feedback loop. If we put a diode facing in each direction, so one affecting the positive, one affecting the negative side of the sine wave, say we put one diode, we start to suddenly limit the oh my god, I've just forgotten the fucking word, and I was just saying the word headroom. There we go. We've taken the headroom, and instead of being 4.5 volts to 9 or 4.5 to 0, we've limited it to whatever the forward voltage drop. So I normally write it as that. So forward voltage drop, that becomes your new maximum. Once you amplify the signal past your forward voltage drop, the signal starts to clip. Are there any questions before I carry on with that? Sorry, because I'm out of breath. Does that make sense so far?
Well, yeah.
It really does. Why did you go asymmetrical for your clipping?
Because it's cool.
I would say.
We'll come to that when we talk about your pedal. But yeah, so if you put a diode in either direction, It's called anti-parallel because they're facing in the parallel but facing the opposite directions. Anti-parallel. In the feedback loop of, in this case, an op amp, but you can do it with transistors as well. As I said, the Big Muff's a great example of that. If you're doing it with transistors, don't forget you need a blocking capacitor. So just look at whatever the Big Muff does and do that, basically. But yes, we're using diodes to limit the headroom of the op amp and kind of force it into distorting earlier than it would do if we didn't have the diodes there. If you add more diodes in series, the forward voltages add together. So with some things, with resistors, if you add resistors in series, their values add together. If you add capacitors in series, their values divide by each other. With diodes, their values add together. So if you had 2 diodes facing in either direction rather than just one, let's go back to our nice. I'd also forgotten as a teacher, I'd forgotten how dirty my hands get because I never used to have a whiteboard marker. I would always rub stuff off my hand, and every time I'd go to the bathroom after a lesson, I'd be like, "Why are my hands jet black?" And
also, you probably would have times where you'd touch your forehead when you were thinking, and you'd go to the bathroom and say, "Whoa, who painted me?"
It was my genes were the worst for it.
You're being too old. We don't have whiteboards in schools anymore. Like I literally work in a Navy's university. We don't have that. We have touchscreen walls.
So I said
it's not a thing.
Yeah, it took me an entire day to find this single dry erase marker. And I said to my partner, so my partner's still a lecturer, and I was saying to her, I was like, we must have, there was a time we had loads. We used to have like fancy boxes, like plastic boxes, every color. And she was like, yeah, but we use smart boards now. Like you almost never use dry erase markers anymore. And it's like, yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, so if we start, sorry.
No, go on. I was gonna try.
If we use more diodes in series, they add together. So if one diode gives you that, then 2 in series would give you that. So the forward voltage drops add together. So you're then clipping it. So you can amplify the signal much more before you're making it distort.
So here's a question. When you're adding diodes together like that to give yourself more headroom, at what point do you have to, like, say too many, like if you put too many diodes in series, do you just basically take it back to your normal headroom? Exactly
that. So you will get to a point where the maximum swing of this is 9 volts. The maximum swing of this is 4.5 volts. So say if you use 2 LEDs in series, like 2 blue LEDs in series will give you about 6 volts of forward voltage drop. They become redundant. They will never clip.
They'll never clip.
Because the op amp will clip before the diodes do. An average silicon diode. So like 1N914 is a very standard value. And that has a volume drop, forward voltage drop, of about 0.6 volts. That's quite average for silicon diodes. So again, if you're adding them together, 2 in series gives you 1.2 volts, and then 1.8, etc., etc. Germanium diodes are weird and they vary.
Oh yeah, I've seen everything from like 200 all the way up to over 1,000. 1,000 millivolt.
Yeah, I'd always, with germanium diodes, always measure them. As a rule of thumb, though, if you're thinking about it to try and decide what diodes to use or how you're going to use it, it's about 0.3. Some are very low. So I think the Clon ones are supposed to be 0.14. And I've seen ones that are the same as silicon diodes. And again, as just another very standard, if you're thinking about what you're going to use, a red LED is 1.6. So again, that's rule of thumb values. So if you're thinking about what you're using in your circuit and where you're going with your circuit and where you want it to clip, this kind of gives you a very rough idea what you could use and how they'll stack together. If you use the silicon and a germanium in series, you're going to get about 0.9 volts. If you use like a germanium and LED in series, again, you'll get a different thing.
So what are you hearing with the asymmetrical clipping? What are you hearing different to break it down into its actual real world?
Okay, so you are hearing more harmonics on one side of the sine wave and less on the other side. So when people talk about odd and even harmonics, when you clip asymmetrically, you create either more odd or even depending on which side of it you're clipping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't know which way is necessarily which. I don't know if having it in one way does odd or the other does even, which way it is. But that's what you're physically hearing. Is you're clipping one of the sides harder, so that is creating more harmonics on either the odd or even, basically.
It makes it sound less tube screaming to me. It doesn't sound as smooth.
Yeah. I'm not a massive fan of. So in this, I've used 3 silicon diodes, and if I'm honest, I would almost never do this. I've done it partly for the layout, because then when you see the layout, you can be like, oh yeah, it's easy to drop them in and have 4 or 5 diodes. And partly because there's a trick coming up later where we change the voltage, the reference voltage, and then we can start using the diodes and that together to change how we're clipping the signal. Any questions?
So no questions. We've just got a few comments.
I apologize if I'm boring. I appreciate that. I feel I'm being boring.
Oh,
mate,
no.
We love it.
I don't think it's boring at all.
That Tube Screamer video literally changed the way I build Tube Screamers. So
thank you.
Yeah, we've got Bennett says recently got into pedal building some kits, and it's amazing what's on the internet quality wise. Yep, absolutely, mate. And hopefully Simon is adding to that. Ed Savage says he feels like with asymmetrical clipping, it feels more dynamic as there's a wider gradient of distortion.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's pretty much my take on it. Like whenever I use it in my pedal designs, I notice also it reacts differently with other things that I stack it with. So I'm kind of looking at it from what's going to be going into it or what's it going to be going into, and sort of look at it from that perspective as to whether or not I want to do symmetrical or asymmetrical.
So I want to jump on this. So I've been watching, as I said, I often miss the live stream because I'm full of drugs late at night and I can't focus on things very well.
Late night Simon.
Yeah, and the danger is I'm very much late night Simon at the moment, which is why I'm rambling, and I'm aware of that. But when you do the Zen Drive clipping, you didn't talk about the most important feature. The most important feature isn't those 3 diodes; it's those MOSFETs. Yes, that's what's clipping.
Because they're not actually wired up as transistors just to add some context there, what if you're listening to this, Brian Denham has said he's going to love the Zen Drive clipping configuration and he's enjoying the stream. It is not boring at all. So there
Thank
you go,
you.
Simon.
I appreciate that. I'm totally with Brian. I use that MOSFET and Schottky setup all the time. It's, to me, so people talk about LEDs being touch sensitive, and I've got a real problem with it. So again, boring diagram. I feel like with a compression thing, as the volume increases over time. Is it over time? Fuck it, let's say it's over time. As volume increases and you hit the point of your forward voltage with LEDs, it basically does that. So it very quickly, once you hit that point, it does that, and it kind of dumps the signal, very harsh. And then obviously, once the volume comes below it, and this is the thing that I think people forget as well. When we talk about clipping thresholds, it's both ways. It's how loud it is going in to make it clip, but then also as it comes down in the decay. With LEDs, again, it very quickly. So you get, I was going to call that a tabletop, but kind of a tabletop. You get what I mean?
A Mesa.
With MOSFETs wired as diodes, now this is more true with the BS170. say, so this is our clipping threshold again. You get this kind of curve like this. So the first few millivolts over the threshold are clipping gently, and then the more you get over it, the harsher it's clipping. And the kind of steeper that line is. So this is when you talk about compression, you get softeny and hardeny, this being softeny and the LED being hardeny. And again, it also means that as it comes down the other side, you get a dome rather than this kind of, like if it was an LED, it'd be kind of square like that, where it's hardeny. But with MOSFETs wide as diodes, it feels like a soft knee. And to me, that gives a really like amp-like response. And if you strum a big chord through a tube amp, you hear it distort, but then as it kind of filters out, it does it really gradually and really smoothly. And for me, that's what MOSFETs wired as diodes do. So I just wanted to jump on that. So yeah, I fully agree. MOSFETs.
I feel like you can have both on a switch, and then you've got both. That's the ultimate answer. So Brian actually says that he likes to make up Zen Drive modules, so then he can mess about with it on his breadboard. MOSFETs included. Nice. I'm 100% not a breadboard guy. Are you guys?
Yeah.
I just don't.
I'm not a breadboard guy anymore. I mean, I played with it when I was in elementary school. That's my breadboard experience. After that, I just started building things, and I said, I'm going to make socketed circuits, and that way I can just pop things in and out and see if I have a circuit design that I know is verified. And I'm not going to just set up a breadboard. I'm just going to build a circuit full of sockets and then just start popping values in and changing them and see in real time what happens.
Yeah, well, it's like when I watched the SoundLoud Liverpool one. Mark's a legend.
Oh, he is,
and he made that point, didn't he?
About you too, mate.
That was very humbling. But yeah, I agree with Mark that if you've got an idea, get the base. If perhaps get the basis of it on breadboard, but then as soon as you can, build it on variable, don't you? To test it. And I'm the same. So I don't breadboard. I go straight to variable. And like John said, sometimes with sockets for things, but usually. Again, it's quite easy to do. In my opinion, it's quite easy to desolder stuff from variable. So I'm not scared to desolder things.
Yeah, that's what I prefer to desolder. Speaking of Liverpool, has anyone seen the news? Or maybe it's not on the news. There's been a terror attack. A guy drove a car through 20 odd people.
In Liverpool? No, I've not seen that.
Well, we won the Premier League, didn't we? And they were bringing it through the city, so there's a lot of crowds. My wife's family travelled down because they're all Liverpool fans. They travelled up to Liverpool, and the car went right past them. Yeah, it looks like they welded a load of plates on the car and smashed it through a lot of people. So,
whoa,
Jesus,
sounds intentional. Yeah.
Mate. If you listen to the media here, it's like a car come off the road and collided with several pedestrians.
Yeah.
Mate, the car armor plated and a hack job come off the road and run the.
Yeah,
the
we have
similar, to him and he got a kick in
similar events here that like you get a totally different representation from what actually happened. It's mad. Yeah. I just got to the point where I just keep my head focused on what I can do, and everything else is like, well, hopefully it's going to work out.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get some of these. We've got some responses on here. First of all, Ed says, great info. He's never heard that about MOSFETs. Completely agree, mate. Brian says he does have a question about clipping. If you start soft clipping the way that a big muff uses it to an electric distortion circuit, would it kill all the volume?
Yeah. No. So I found when I did it exactly the same as a big muff, I found it did. No. Did you not find that?
Now, where does it go in the big muff? Because now with my flash drive,
it's in the feedback loop. So you put a capacitor from the collector. You have a capacitor, then you have your two diodes going back to the base.
Oh wait,
and it's the same as this, where essentially you're lowering the headroom of the transistor to force it into distorting.
So you're lowering it by too much. I mean,
so it dumps a lot of volume. Which is why, so again, like the big muff has two of those stages, and then at the end it has a boost to make up for all the volume that's been dumped.
Yeah.
Like in the
Okay.
super
Yeah.
too. The supertone bender
Yeah.
does the same thing.
Yeah. That's it. A lot of them do because it dumps so much volume.
I need to do that supertone bender repair. Actually, that's the next live stream. Probably
Nice.
this week if we can do it. Ed Savage said he loves breadboards. Fantastic, mate. You're on your own there as far as I'm concerned.
Well, no, I haven't played around with
I
some
just
modern breadboards that are a lot more easily pulled out and set up. Like I was having to take these. I was having to take these things and like connect everything and put it together. And then by the time I did all that, I could have just built the circuit.
My issue is I use massive caps, and the leg of the cap stretches the breadboard.
It'll
or
ruin
you
your
force
socket.
it in. Exactly. And
that's the
so
same.
I just
that's the same with me. I use a lot of components that have like these like 1/16 of an inch thick legs on them.
Yeah.
And they just do not fit in breadboard sockets. Heck, I even can't even get them in some of the sockets that I use for other stuff too. It's like they're so big they won't even fit in your standard socket strip socket. So
yeah.
We've got Mike here says he doesn't have the patience for breadboard. Man after my own heart there.
Same here.
And Hubcap John. Hello, John. How's it going, mate?
Evening, John.
Cheers, mate.
We're getting a lecture from the legend. The professor is definitely in the house. That is for sure.
Well, we're finally past that first gain stage, which took us like 2.5 hours.
Oh no!
It's only an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh yeah, it's 9 o'clock. So not 8. Okay, yeah, that's less bad.
Ruben says he's not a fan of breadboards either, so there you go. Brian does have a question though. You're not alone. He's had fun making the EQD depth clon big muff and tons more. I've not built any of the EQD stuff. I know that Arrows is a tube screamer, but anyway, shall we move on to the next stage?
So from here we kind of fly through it now because the next op amp stage we've already discussed really, but this is a bit between it, and this is the bit that is a weird one. And I say that, so I've nicked this from the Timmy, the Zen Drive, the Rat. This is a very standard variable low pass filter. But usually to make it work nicely, you have to use a reverse log tapered pot. And this is something I wanted to bring up here actually. So, and this was something that it took me a while to get it into my head to learn. If you've got a pot, so first things first, if this is your pot and you're looking at it from the front, so this is the knob, the first thing to remember is what the labeling conventions. So, I think Joe's laughing. I feel like you did it the other way around. If you're looking
I messed it up, didn't I? Because I imagine that I'm looking at it upside down. So it goes 3, 2, 1, left to right, upside down.
Oh, I thought on the back. Oh shit, that's the only pot I've never done it on. Oh my god, actually, on the back. Right on the back of every pot. I say every pot. Apparently, every pot that, apart from the ones in my literal hand. I write 1 and 3 to remind myself, and I've been doing it. I've been doing pedals nearly 10 years. And I still do it because it's so easy to get confused. So one it's worth remembering the conventions that if you're looking at the front of a pot, i.e. the side that the knob goes on, it's 1, 2, 3 left to right. When you're building a pedal and it says lug 1 or lug 2 and 3, that's what it means.
Because you're looking at it upside down, right, when you're building it as well.
Yeah, when you're soldering.
Because I'm a bit twisted in the head. I have to really think about these things to get them right, and I have to. When I'm wiring something up, I physically, mentally turn the pedal over in my head and go, it's upside down. That's why it's 3, 2, 1. Yeah,
same. No, honestly, and this is why, as I said, so I mark up my Vero as well. All of my Vero has little Sharpie marks on, and it's all to help me orientate where I am and what I'm doing with things. What I wanted just to quickly mention is we normally talk about turning the pot clockwise to have more, don't we? So, if you want more volume, more gain, more brightness, more bass, we normally turn things clockwise. If you want to turn it clockwise and have more resistance, you're looking at having lug 1 on its own and then lug 2 and 3 together. So that gives you more resistance.
Yeah.
But if you're turning it this way and you want less resistance, so which is what this which is what this tone pot is, and what the gain pot is on the DOD 250 and MXR Distortion Plus, then you would do it the other way. You would have 1 and 2 tied together, and you'd have 3 on its own, and that gives you less resistance as you turn it clockwise.
Basically all you're doing is just determining with the common sweep, which side of the pot you're attaching it to, whether you want it to be on the left or the right.
Exactly.
So, this come up with the Antares Overdrive, didn't it? So Stute, absolute legend designer, he seen it as you turn the clean blend up, you add more clean.
Yeah.
Or is it the other? And people are saying no, as you turn it up, it should have more distortion.
More distortion.
And
again, and it's
not really. It depends how you think about it.
It's personal preference, isn't it? Because again, I'm the same. So on my compressor, as you turn the blend knob up clockwise, you get more clean. Because to me, that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah. But yeah, I also get it again if it says. I suppose how it's labeled and how you think about it. But yeah, it took me a while to remember that. So when I was designing circuits, if I had the pot that I knew needed less resistance as I turn it clockwise, it was to remind myself that 3 becomes its own lug, and then you're connecting 1 and 2 together. And if you want more resistance,
that's how you normally see it, isn't it? Really, on the most part, you'll have number 1 and number 2 will be tied together, and 3 on its own. That's like
no, it's
the other way.
I'd say the other way.
Yeah.
So like the gain control, normally as you're turning it so like a volume part, as you're turning it clockwise, you want more resistance. And again, a gain pot is usually more resistance. But yeah, it was just, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to make a little video of it myself for Instagram. But I'm a mess of a person. I think, I've got a friend who's doing tomorrow, actually. He's the guy that's got like 3 little treble makers and has convinced me to, go back to an old design of a little treble maker. But yeah, he keeps saying I should do videos and stuff. It's like, it takes so much effort.
Well, you've just talked for an hour and a half now, and I'm going to get like 10 videos out of this. Hey, have you never tried Opus Clip? It does it for you.
I've not actually. I've not tried anything.
AI, you film the thing, upload it to Opus Clip, and then press go, and it just that's why I'm so productive. It's not because I'm good at video editing. I'm terrible.
that genuinely, I don't mean that sound harsh. It makes me feel better because you've put out so much content recently. It's like, how did you find the time for it? But
unless I'm editing a full length video, i.e., my YouTube videos, I use that Opus Clip, and it just cuts them all down, adds the subtitles and all the stuff.
Sometimes with hilarious consequences when it adds the subtitles.
Oh mate, it's so good. Do you know what you can edit it, but I leave it in because I think people are going to jump all over me in the comments, and I love the banter. So.
Okay, so we're up to the tone control. It's only taken us an hour and a half to get here. We're only like 6 components in, but the tone control is a very standard low pass filter, and this is the way this is wired up. Unfortunately, it needs the second op amp stage. So it's like in a rat. So you've got your rat, you've got the distorting stage, then this style tone control. And this is why it needs that buffer in a rat, because this style low pass filter needs that. So there are other style tone controls that work like low pass filters and don't need it. But I've done this because we're using a dual op amp, and that's the point. But yeah, unfortunately, this isn't one you can just tag onto the end of whatever distort. Like you can't build an Electra and then just tag this on the end. You would need to build like Electra, then this, then like a LPB one or a buffer or something. And again, this follows very kind of standard, similar to the gain control, really, where so we've got R6 plus the tone control and wherever that is. That forms the resistance. That gives us R in our capacity in our low pass filter calculation, and then C4 is just C4. So as I said, where Joe uses ChatGPT, I just use a low pass filter calculator. And basically, as you turn the pots clockwise, and this is why I was mentioning it before, when the pot's fully left, you've got R6, which is 1K, and this, which is 22K. So your max when it's fully left, you've got 23k, and then your capacitor is still 10 nanofarads. So if you bung that into a calculator, I think it's about 300 hertz. So when it's fully left, it's cutting the signal at about 300 hertz. Then as you turn the pot clockwise, this value is getting smaller and smaller. So with the pot at maximum, you've got 1k, this becomes 0, and then you still get 10k. So it's changing. I think that's the other thing to remember with these kind of tone controls is they are, excuse me, they are cut only tone controls.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go into a rant about the Paul Cochran Timmy. I probably will, but well, no, because he's pitched so because he couldn't get hold of reverse log pots, so he used log pots. They go backwards. So he said to everyone, so that you make sense in your head when you think about it, they are cut only. So start with them fully left, and then you're cutting it. Like, as you said, with like stew in the blend pot, it makes sense because you're blending in the signal, and you're bringing in the clean signal. But because of that, every time people talk about a Timmy, they're like, oh yeah, but the pots they're cut only. I'm like, literally every fucking tone control is cut only unless it's active.
Unless it's active,
It is cut only.
I mean,
even in an amplifier.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just the people have got that into their head that. But I assure you, if you had a Timmy and you put all the controls fully left, you have got way more bass and way more treble than you had before you turned that pedal on. So, but yeah. So
your guitar's volume is reductive. Sorry, tone control.
It's cut only. It's all just cut only. So yeah, it's a very simple tone control. If you find that when you've got the tone control fully clockwise, so it's at its brightest, if you find it's too bright, you can make R6 bigger. If you make that bigger, it changes. Like we're saying with minimum gain, this is like minimum cut. So the larger this is, it'll cut more to start with. So if you find it too bright, make that bigger. And then the opposite's true. If you find it too dark, either start by making this smaller or make C4 smaller. So I've gone for, as I said, I've intentionally gone for values that are easy to get. I assure you there are better values that would give you a smoother sweep. But these are purely values that are easier to get. And if you're not sure where the calculator is, message me and I'll send you the link for the calculations, for the calculator itself. Sorry. But yeah, so we've gone from our gain stage to this very simple low pass filter, which is just cutting treble. And as I said, it's worth remembering it's not boosting or anything. It is purely just changing the turnover frequency. So it's always cutting like that, and it's just kind of changing the frequency. And then we go into this second op amp stage. And you should notice this is basically the same as the first stage, but with fixed values for things and no clipping diodes. So we've still got R7 over. We've still got exactly the same gain calculation. R7 divided by R8 plus 1. So this gives you a gain of 3. And it's fixed. You'll also see that this doesn't have C3s on the first stage, and it doesn't have it on the second one. It doesn't need it in terms of like, even that first stage. That I call it the gain filter cap. The circuit never physically needs it. It will completely work without it if you just have those resistors to VREF or ground. I do VREF because it makes most sense to me. But that's just changing as it amplifies. It's intentionally kind of starting from a cut point. So as I said, in that original value where it's R5 and C3, it's cutting the bass at 720 hertz. And so as you're amplifying it, it keeps that cut and it keeps everything like nice and tight and clean. In the second stage, without that capacitor, if you increase the gain more, it increases both the treble and the bass relative to what those values are. And this is kind of a trick I've used here to go with the tone pot. So in the Timmy, in the Timmy, the Rat, the Zen Drive, they should all be reverse log pots so that the sweep is smooth. I've cheated a little bit. In the Timmy, this value R7 and R8 are the same values. I've doubled the value of R7 here, which not only gives you a bit more output volume, which isn't needed, it's not quiet, but it also makes it brighter. And so you don't need the reverse log pot. You can kind of use the linear one and still get an okay-ish sweep.
That's a good workaround.
Yeah.
And it's good for first-time builders because you can just buy, as you say, them Amazon components kits. They come with loads of linear pots.
Yeah,
and whatever.
exactly. And then C5. So C5 doesn't need to be there at all. C5 was for me a tonal thing, and this is where it is just taming a little bit of treble. I probably overcooked it making R7 10K, and I find it gets a little bit brash. So just having C5 there does exactly the same as C2 does in that first stage, where it just tames that upper treble. The cap. So next to it, C9, that 100 NF cap. So, and again, I know Joe's talked about this with the is it filter multiplier for 9-volt filtering?
Yeah. So it's kind of like the filter off a Crybaby wah is where I got it from.
Well, the thing with op amps is you're supposed, so to make it as effective as possible, you have that 100 NF capacitor, that 100 nanofarads, as physically close to the op amp as you can. And it sounds weird, but made of ceramic, which is intentionally a little bit shit. So it's a little bit microphonic. But the point is, it's there to keep it as quiet as possible. We've not looked at the power section, but we'll do that in a second. That's not too much to it. But yeah, the C9, when you see the layout, it's as physically close to the op amp as possible, just to try and help with any noise.
I've not heard that before. Keeping the
it's a weird one.
Some it makes a difference, but not particularly with this.
That was something that I learned from Craig Anderton in his electronics projects for musicians book. He talked about that quite a bit because he does a lot of op amp designs and CMOS designs and that sort of thing. So
I got it from either Jack Orman or one of those, like either AMZ or something like that.
One of those legends.
Because that's it again. I'd always seen it, as you say, just normal, so like 100 UF cap, then 100 NF cap, just in series, whatever. And part of my brain was like, that doesn't really make sense. It's not doing a huge. You're just adding, capacitors in parallel add together. But then I read an article, was like, if it's physically as close, it was being physically as close and being ceramic and not being like, don't make it fancy, make it like an intentionally.
I wonder why ceramic. Like I get it being so close, because obviously then it charges faster straight from the thing. But I don't understand why ceramic.
It's something to do with it being ceramic being slightly microphonic and the physicality of whatever it's doing. And it sounds, but again, this is like so many of these things, like my gain filter value, like R2, like R3. These are all things that I read about, tried it, and it worked. And I went, oh, cool. And so I've just stuck with it and never questioned it. I just do it by default now. Again.
You almost need someone to blind play the pedal and you switch in and out the two caps and then say which do you prefer type thing.
Yeah.
Like a loud amp as well. None of these digital modelers or like practice amps. I mean like 100 watt amp. Because I tell you what I've noticed is when certain people buy pedals from me and they're playing at the volumes that they play, they say, actually, it's doing a thing I'm not keen on. And then I'll turn it up at home, which I never normally do. And I can hear the thing or I probably would have changed something else in there to make it sound different. So,
as I said, that'd be interesting. I've had a lot of that recently with this guy in LA because, as I said, he's playing big amps loud and I'm not.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of feedback. And it's things that I'd think to myself, I've never thought about that or heard that. One of them, and I don't know if either of you do this or how you feel about it or if you're worried about it at all. He bought a pedal off me and he was like, when I unplug the input jack, it hums. I'm like, well, yeah, of course it does. You've unplugged the input jack. And he's like, well, it doesn't do it with all my pedals. And I started trying a bunch of pedals that I had. And a lot of pedals use those switching jacks. So if you unplug the input jack, it grounds the signal. So you unplug it and rather than humming, it goes to silence. And I was like, that's really simple. And it's a really easy thing to do.
But you think, why does
so
it
yeah,
matter? But then if you're playing, recording or whatever, it matters.
yeah,
then.
and when it's loud, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Just being able to unplug it and it go to silence rather than in the background. But yeah, do either of you do anything like that, or
well,
ever thought
my
about stuff like that?
My question would be, why on earth would you ever unplug a pedal? That sounds weird.
Well,
Sometimes
that's but that's
sometimes you want to. Yeah, I mean, there's certain effects that you get out of just. I've seen people do crazy things, Joe. I've played with noisecore bands, so anything is possible. So that's basically it. Why not?
Yeah,
is the other question.
No,
Yeah.
I get it. It's just my pedal board's
Yeah.
just its thing, and it doesn't. When I'm playing it, it doesn't change.
Yeah,
But if
I do a lot.
Musician, like you were saying,
Yeah, that's I do because I've got my pedal floor rather than a board, so I'm always changing the pedals out. And actually,
I've got my Indian
since
rug right here.
yeah, but since he said that, and I started doing it. It's like, oh, that's really easy. I just unplug the input and it goes to silence, and I can plug the next pedal in. And again, you go input to the output, and because that input jack's grounded as well, so you can change pedals really quickly without having to mute it elsewhere.
yeah,
and it's a really easy. I think if I had to change everything I did, if I had to like use new jacks or something, I probably wouldn't do it. But I use those vertical like panel mounted jacks, which have got the switching on them already.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wire those up.
Like those.
Yeah, those box ones.
Brian
love
says never unplug, just get more power supplies and patch
Yeah.
cables. Ed Savage says makes sense with the bypass cap next to the voltage input on an op amp. That way you get what you want to get the. Sorry, I can't. I'm trying to read past me.
Any noise that wants to get it would have been between the cap and the op amp. Yeah,
makes sense. Well, as soon as your question goes on 2 lines, my camera boom like cuts 1 line off. So
no. I'm so sorry that I don't have my laptop functioning today, because normally I can like read those things just by looking over here, but I'm on an iPhone alone today.
I've got my old laptop in the corner, but it's so old that I can't connect to the internet with it anymore. That's how
I think that might have. Wow. I think that might have been what happened to mine. I think they might have planned obsolescence me out. With this, because it won't upgrade to Windows 11 now. It's one of those stuck in 10 forever laptops. Yeah,
mine's a Mac, and I need to update to 10 point something. But it's now it's like it's 2011. It's 2011, and I think it would, but I'd lose everything. So a lot of my
you don't want to do that. I know people that did that, and they wish they never had. They're like, all of the stuff I archived is gone.
Yeah. Especially like plugins and stuff for doors and things. Right. We're almost through the circuit. We're almost there. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
You can see the light at the end of the output jack.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was so we get to C6, which is the output capacitor. So like the input capacitor, it's there to stop paralytic DC kind of leakage or whatever. They're meant as blocking caps, but they affect the tone slightly. And as a rule of thumb, as I'm sure we've all kind of discussed before, kind of you normally have kind of small input cap at the start and a larger one at the output. So I've gone for 1U, which is like my stock size for output caps.
It's rather large.
Yeah, and it's large enough. If I'm honest, I nearly almost go for non-polarized caps here.
100%.
But I appreciate a lot of circuit, and as I said, because I had those kits in mind, they normally just have electrolytics. So good old-fashioned electrolytic 1UF cap. Then R9, similar to R2, I always feel like it's nice to have a bit of resistance on the output at all times. So, even if you've got the volume pot very hard, even if it's at full, there's always a bit of resistance in series. And then we've got a good old-fashioned level pot wired as a voltage divider, which is just again, it's cut only. It's attenuating the output volume. 100k log is a very standard value that we all just use. Someone asked me why, and we ended up having a discussion about it. And I think part of it is impedance again. So in theory, your output is impedance without buffers is whatever that resistance between essentially R9 and the output, the resistance between that and ground is essentially your output impedance. So if the volume pot is at full, it's 100k between the output and ground, so your output impedance is 100k. But if you have it kind of very low, the output impedance is obviously much lower. And I think for guitar, there is, I don't know if you probably have. If you're turning up a level pot and all of a sudden you hit a point where it feels like everything just blooms, it's like, it's not necessarily the volume, it's just like the whole tone jumps. And I think part of that is because it's a 100k log, you get to a point where you get like 20, 30k impedance, and suddenly your signal's like, yep, that's what I was looking for. 10k to 30k, bang on. I'm happy with that. So it's not just that volume; it's also the output impedance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's, or at least that's how I've got it in my head, which is why everyone uses 100k log pots. Again, if you've made changes to this so that it's quieter, you might want to use 100k linear so that you get kind of quicker up the sweep. Because that's the other thing. I will draw that as well. Because now that I've discovered drawing again, I love drawing again. Who knew?
My name is Simon, and I like to draw.
I do. So with a pot, again, we're back to our good old fashioned. We're looking at a pot from the front. If you find that as you turn it, you get a lot of stuff happening here and almost nothing there. In this instance, if you wanted to have a smoother sweep, you would need to replace this pot with log, because that way you get a much smoother sweep round it. So this, again, the Joyo Vintage Overdrive is a great example of this. The gain control is linear.
This is where I first discovered this, because many years ago, you took me through this and I was like, wow. Because you used to stuff a larger pot in them things. Because they have them tiny little, what are they, the green Japanese
the
things.
little like...
Yeah,
well,
9mm
have the
ones.
cheap Chinese copies of
the little plastic
pots.
ones,
Yeah, I used to rip out and just put like a normal, is it 16mm? Whatever standard pot is.
Yeah, your standard mini pot.
Yeah,
it was good.
I bung one of those in. Although, but then I grew up and matured and started getting those plastic ones, and so I could just replace it like for like. But yes, if you find that you turn a pot and you get too much action in the first kind of quarter, and then it almost feels like nothing else happens, that's when you should replace the pot for logarithmic. If you get the opposite, where, yeah, exactly that. So if you feel like if suddenly everything happens in that very last section, this is what I was saying about the DOD 250. I still recommend the DOD 250 to people, but if you use a linear gain control, you get to about 3 o'clock and all of a sudden the gain jumps massively. In which case you would replace it for a anti-log or reverse log or C taper.
A C taper,
yeah. The tube screamer we talked about before, because the tube screamer is a funny one. But I would just, for completionist's sake, if you with a tube screamer tone control, you often find that nothing happens for this whole bit here, and then all of a sudden at either end, lots of stuff happens. And how do you fix that? One way to fix it is to build my simple screamer, where it uses a 1K pot and it's kind of magic. Or originally this uses a W taper pot, and it's not. If you think about it from left to right, it goes logarithmic and then reverse logarithmic. But with how the tube screamer tone control works, it works like this, where noon is nothing. So when you've got the pot set to noon, there's no resistance, and then it's reverse log out from the center. So if you think about it like that way, of course you've only got these little bits here and here. And like we said before, if that's the case, you'd need something logarithmic to do it. So it's reverse log out from the center both ways. So yes, tube screamer, if your tone pot feels weird, it's because you need a W taper. Or as I said, alternatively build my simple screamer, which has done a lot of doubling and halving to get values that don't need that.
Yeah, it's really hard to find W taper pots anymore.
Yeah,
it's almost impossible.
Yeah, I get them from. Oh, well, Christ, where do I get them from? There's a guy on it. Well, he used to be on eBay, and then he had loads of trouble with eBay. Then he was on Etsy. there is some Banzai in Germany often have them.
Yeah.
And there's somewhere else. Yeah, because Banzai used to do, because I did a few vintage overdrives where I've got those little plastic 9mm. Banzai did the W taper plastic ones as well, which was extra fancy. But yeah, Banzai in Germany do them and post worldwide. And there is somewhere in the UK, but I cannot now remember where it was. But Late Night Simon bought 4 at some point.
I never knew Banzai was in Germany after all this time.
Yeah.
Ordering stuff from them. Mad.
Yeah, it gets here quick, doesn't it? It's only a couple of weeks usually.
Well,
they're pretty
I ordered loads of stuff from Crazy Parts if anyone's ever used them. I'm building a telly and they sell like real good replicas of old stuff. They sell like the SG Trem things as well, like the old
Maestro.
Yeah. And the other one as well, the up down Trem or whatever it is. They sell all that. And the ebony blocks and stuff like that with the inlays in. Really good.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm a geek, so my pick guard had to be made of the nitrate plastic that the originals were. Of course it does.
So of course catch on fire.
You need to spend a couple of £100 on a pick guard that's going to off gas and not be the right shape. Of course it does. Which is exactly what it did.
Nice. I think
I've had to replicate that for people before too.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want a new pick guard on their vintage guitar. They wanted a pick guard that was new, that looked like it was old and belonged on the vintage guitar.
Yeah, well, that's it. I'm building red. So I've ordered the red pickups from Monty's. I've also ordered candy apple red paint and all that. I'm going to do a video.
Oh, sweet.
Make myself a...
Have you ever done a candy apple finish before?
On pedals, not on a guitar. I've done Sherwood Green and... I'm not on a guitar.
If you want some pointers, we can talk about them off camera at some point, because I've done a lot of metallic clear coat finishes with different colors, and that's basically like any of your candy finishes.
Yeah, silver underneath and then over the top.
It depends on what you're going for. If you
that's what that's is.
Yeah, we can talk about this off air, because this is a pedal show. We're not talking guitar. So.
It's all related.
Mate, you don't want to get me started. You don't want to get me started out trying to show me Strat again. Anyone want to buy a Strat? Anyway,
right. Yeah, we're almost there. So the last bit on this is the power section. And it's all very standard fare. We've talked about the VREF, or the voltage reference, and how that works. And the only other 3 bits are D4, which is a polarity reverse protection diode. This means if you wire up a normal standard guitar power jack, you normally have the center pin as negative and the outside pin as positive. If you put in the wrong way round, that diode blows up and protects your pedal. That's what that's there for.
Yep.
I never had
a protection diode.
Controversially enough,
it's weird. Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, I didn't for a long time.
I just feel like it's natural selection.
I put them on things that I know if it gets a reverse current through it, it's going to ruin a very valuable component that I don't have the replacement for. But a lot of times I don't put them on pedals that, like, just don't need them, other than, it's something that I've found it was becoming an extra step. And also with some of my board designs, I was starting to find, like, well, if I left that, protection diode out, then I can fit it.
That's it. Yeah, it's space saving.
That's what it is. It's a space saving.
But
thing.
Well, that's exactly why I didn't do it for a long time. And then there was a guitar store locally that started selling some of my pedals, and one of the guys there was like, "Oh, I saw you don't." I'd sent him Schematic for something, so I see you don't have that. And I went, "Well, no, when I build stuff for myself, I know I'm never going to plug in the wrong polarity. I literally don't have any center positives." And he went, "Yeah, but not everyone does that." And you're like, "Oh, well." Actually, it would be, if you send it out to somebody, they plug in the wrong power supply, it's easier to replace that one diode than it is to try and go through and figure out what else is broken. So,
it would save me fixing my own pedals when people do that, which I do, because I'm like, well, I don't want my pedal out there in the world broken.
Same, same. I've had where people have bought them second or third hand, and they message you and they go, "Oh, it's broken," and you're like, "Well, it's got my name on it," so I kind of, if I don't fix it, I look like a dick, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
But I know I say that kind of sarcastically. I'm genuinely more than happy to do it.
But my thing is, it's just it's not a very sexy component. Someone sent me a batch of them the size of a finger, I'd be like, I'm putting that in a pedal no matter what.
Fair.
So I'd probably make space for it. But it's like, it's just a bit boring.
Yeah, no, completely valid. And yeah, it's worth remembering. So when it's in series, I've used a Schottky diode because it's then got a smaller amount of resistance across it. If you're having it to ground, so again, some people have it as a diode to ground, which does exactly the same job. But that's then you normally use like a rectifier diode rather than a Schottky.
That's exactly how the Crybaby wire has it.
Yeah.
Why is it?
No, a lot do, and again, it kind of makes sense. They both do the same job. But yeah, so finally we've got R10 and C7, which is our power filtering to stop any ripple, and it's just it's a fixed low pass filter at a very low frequency to stop any kind of ripple on the power supply and extra noise. This is things again. For a long time, I didn't used to put that resistor, so I just have a massive cap. And I wonder why I would have noise, and so I tried making the capacitor bigger. I'd still get power noise, and again, it was my pedal guru Ferret. It was like, well, it's a low pass filter. It needs the resistor as well. That's what forms the filter. So yeah, it doesn't need to be 100 ohm. It could be smaller. I think 47 ohm is quite a standard value for that. But yeah, so that's it. That's the standard, bog standard, simple drive, 2025. The schematic for it. We've got the layout for it as well. We probably don't need to look at it because it just kind of matches to this. But if Joe can jump to the next simple drive layout, which is I think it's just SD Sailor possibly. It's the other one that isn't the box basically, or simple drive.
I'm gonna tap out for just a second. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Let me get that up, Simon, right there. I think it may be. Okay. I should have like a slick process for this, but I just don't. I'm the worst of technology. That's what it is.
And yet you use ChatGPT really well.
It's an app, so
okay.
I'm not too bad with apps and whatever.
Yeah.
That is not downloading very fast there. Wait there. Let's see if I can put it up a different way. Yeah, the problem is I'm using my laptop, so it's got with my camera in. It doesn't let me use the mouse, so I'm trying to use that crappy little what's it called, like the hand paddle thing.
Yeah, trackpad.
Yeah, not good for me. No. Let's see. It's this one. So fine. Oh, it's telling me download blocked. That's fantastic. Beautiful screen. Right, this may be a bit smaller.
That's fine. I mean, to be fair, it was more just for reference because there's only one change between the standard version and the one I've built for you in terms of values. So yeah, like I said, my version. No, I think you weren't on screen at the time. I think it was just John and I talking about it. The version I built for myself in this battered former little treble maker enclosure with its diagonal knobs, which I quite like, but I understand why people don't like it because it gets in the way of your foot. But I built it with like the green, like modern green meanies, like mylar caps and electrolytic caps, and just very standard stuff to see how it sounded.
Yeah.
And then I built yours with some kind of carbon comp resistors in the signal path, tropical fish because they're cool.
I just love tropical fish caps.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it sounds weird. I think it's a very British thing because they're mullered, aren't they? Which is a British company. So yeah, maybe that's it. It's kind of a national pride for our electronics. Yeah. I mean, when we spoke to Chris Vincent, he was saying that he doesn't like them in Rangemasters because he feels like they're quite trebly and high endy, or like stabby, I think is the way he described it. Which I was thinking Yeah, I think of them as quite. I think stabby's the right word, isn't it? Where it is quite a prominent attack to it.
Yeah.
So which component are we talking about that I missed? All I got to.
We've not got to. So okay, if Joe can't open, that's fine. There is only one difference, and it's part of this VREF circuit. So earlier on, when we were talking about the biasing for an op amp and how the op amp biasing works, where, as I said, we've got our voltage swing. We tell the op amp that its negative voltage is 0 volts, the positive is 9 volts, and we tell the middle bit. And the easiest way to do that is to make it 4.5 volts, which is exactly half, so that the headroom between the positive and the negative side is equal. So this to there is exactly the same. Those two bits are the same. So you
is this the picture, or am I miles off?
It is, but that's weird, isn't it? That's not got the values on or anything. But it's just like
this is what.
No, it's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, so one of the things we can do with this, and what the Timmy does, the Timmy changes this reference voltage. So the Timmy moves the voltage. Which way does it move it? Up. So I think it moves it. So rather than being 4.5 volts, and say which is bang in the center, it moves it to about 5 volts. And what that does is that changes the headroom available. So on one side of the signal, the positive side, rather than going from here to here, suddenly we've limited the headroom. That's a terrible place to draw a line, Simon. We've limited it. So on one side, the headroom is suddenly smaller. We've constricted it, which means this side of the sine wave or the audio will clip before the other side clips. So this gives us asymmetrical clipping on the op amp itself. So even if we had no diodes or nothing at all, we could make an op amp clip asymmetrically just by moving the reference voltage. There's a pedal by Tech 21, one of my favorite pedals, the Double XL. I think it's for fuzz, but technically it's a fuzz, I think. But the Tech 21 Double XL has a warp control. And what that warp control does is it moves this voltage. So it goes between, I think it's like 6 volts and 3 volts, basically. And it means that you're clipping it, the op amp asymmetrically, either one way or the other. And it sounds completely different depending on where it is. It's a control that I ripped off for a long time. I bunged it as many things as I could because it's brilliant. And honestly, the Tech 21 Double XL is really underrated.
It's their branding. It's just so plain. That's why they didn't do as.
Yeah, but it's weird. 'Cause, have you seen the Double XL?
No, I'm just thinking of a black pedal with yellow writing, Tech 21.
That's it. No, where is it? Talk amongst yourselves.
I find that with a lot of pedals, don't you, John? That like if they just change the branding, like for example, this is branding on point. The Demodash T120, I've got 2 of them. Fantastic branding, like a videotape echo, and the packaging it comes in is like I would buy that even if it didn't.
And also the stuff that the guy in Canada, Super Cool Pedals, does.
Oh wow.
Oh wow, this jewel turn.
This is the Tech 21 Double XL in its.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a really like underrated. You can still pick them up for under 100 quid.
I've never seen one.
For now.
No, and that's it. So my other.
I feel like you've been copying my boogie pedal. Like what the hell?
Yeah, I've got 2 pedal gurus. One's called Ferret. One's called Tim. And Tim introduced me to that years ago when I was a functional member of society. I helped 2 of his bands mix their records. And for his second band, which was like a noisier grunge band, we re-recorded some snares and stuff through distortion pedals to get that cool crunch. And that was the pedal he had, and he brought it round, and we were putting snares and kick drums and all this kind of stuff through it. And yeah, amazing. And so it was one of the first pedals I built once I started building pedals, because it's just 2 dual op amps, like no diodes. It is just That and the warp control, as I said, is brilliant, and that's what it's doing. It's changing the reference voltage, so the op amp itself clips asymmetrically. This is this is what we were talking about to start with. What happens if you match this? I don't know why I'm wiping this off, Simon. You're using the same diagram.
Well, I feel like you're just about to answer this question from Ed. He said, what if you were to move the clipping asymmetrically using the bias voltage in one direction and then also with the diodes? Is he correct in thinking that you get a little extra headroom on one side?
Yeah. Or you do what I've done on Joe's and you make it closer to symmetrical clipping. So on one side, you've got the diodes. That's a terrible line. On one side, we've now got our 5 volts here, and we've got 2 diodes on that side. We've got 1 diode on this side. And so what we end up doing is inadvertently creating almost symmetrical clipping, but rather than being a center, we've like moved the whole kind of thing up.
And that's what Brian's saying, rail clip on one side, diode
one side and diode clip on the other. Yeah. And so the light speed is my great example of this. It's asymmetrical diode clipping, but then it's got the asymmetrical VREF so that you end up with something that's closer to symmetrical clipping. But again, it's not quite symmetrical. So it sounds different because it's more, But yeah, so that again, I
wonder how many people mess up the light speed when they're DIY building them because they put both clipping on one side. That'd be quite.
Well, it's the same with the Timmy. Because I know you did yours with the guide, but if you built it just knowing what the schematic was, people for the most part make both of those VREF values the same, which makes sense because you would. Yeah. But it's not in the Timmy. The VREF is asymmetrical or off. I call it offset VREF, but the diode clipping is symmetrical. So you end up with asymmetrical clipping, even though it's using symmetrical diodes. And it's one of those things that, like the K-Line Pure Sky's a Timmy clone, they miss it. A lot of Timmy clones miss it. And I think that's why it's one of those pedals where once you play the original and you play against other clones, you're like, oh, the original sounds amazing. It's kind of really natural and it's got this like wonderful clipping. And yeah, that's why.
I did paint by numbers on the ones I built. Put diode here. Okay.
I did watch. Yeah, because I sent you a hot toddy to build it to hopefully ease your Timmy woes. And I watched that, and it's like the layout the layout you'd used. So, that was peak internet. Was that the tagboard one with the fancy one? Yeah. The tagboard one with fancy components, and the guy. I mean, to be fair, you were right where you kind of double checked things and went, no, that is definitely wrong, mate.
Yeah.
But this is so you shouldn't always trust things on the internet.
That absolutely destroyed me, that pedal. Like that video took everything out. In fact, I've just got a picture of it on his board. He's come back and bought another pedal. So he must have liked it. But that honestly, I was a broken man after that. He nearly went in the skip a few times.
Right, so we are now up to the nonsense that is the box. So, Joe, if you could open that schematic, I'd appreciate it. But because this is very different.
Right, I do have this one actually available. So, I've got to ask, why the box?
Literally that, because it was the enclosure that I bought from. There's a shop in Derby called RF Pots, which is one of the longest running shops in Derby. I forget how long. I think 100 and something years. Electronic shop, amazing, and it's still family owned, brilliant. And they sell those like off the not quite Hammond enclosures. And yeah, I bought that one that John's got, which is basically a cube. And
it's deep.
Yeah, that's it. And
deep
my brain
just
went, it's the box. And as I said, Brad Pitt in my head going, what's in the box? Oh no, where is it?
Oh, there you go. Look, this from Ed Savage. He has the box.
Ironically, John doesn't, because I didn't have a box that was big enough for it. So I think it was just like a random cardboard box.
It was.
So here, when you see the variable layouts for these, the variable layout is exactly the same. I've lost one cut, but this adds some what I think are quite interesting things, and this doesn't necessarily. This by this point, it wasn't about using off-the-shelf components. It's like where could you go with it? So we've gone from 3 knobs to 5 knobs. We've added a dedicated bass control and what I call VCS. So I've wholesale stolen this from the Nordland ODRC, which is the guy that originally worked for, or the original owner of Nobles, who designed the ODR1, very famous Nashville pedal. When he left, he started his own company and made under the Nordlander or something. Yeah, he makes his own version, and it has a knob called decompress. And once I played it, I was like, "This is great." I found the schematic, and I went, "That is brilliant." And so, let's talk about that first, because as I said, I use this a lot. My fancy, I make a pedal is listed on my reverb at the moment. I've got the LNS drive, which is the Late Night Simon drive, and that's got the VCS control on it. What we have is in the feedback loop, we've got 2 very standard silicon diodes. Then, and this is something again, which if you build a Timmy, I'll show you. So the Timmy, people often think is just this. They think that is the clipping for a Timmy.
Yeah,
that is not the clipping for the Timmy. That's the clipping for the Timmy, and
that's what confused me.
Yeah. Now he's done this for a very good reason. The original Tim had a switch. So it had a switch that did this. So when the switch is not engaged, you're hearing all 4 diodes. But when the switch is engaged, you've then got this link which jumps these 2 diodes, and then you're only hearing these 2. So this link down the middle becomes very important. Then on the V2 Timmy, he's still got this link down the middle, and then uses a switch that does 3 positions. So he's then got a diode like so I can't remember, but yeah, there's a switch, and that's the point, is that it's either jumping both of these, or they're both in, or you've got one in parallel. Diodes in parallel are weird. If they have the same forward voltage, they half, so it's like resistors in parallel. If they have a different forward voltage, theoretically, whichever has the lower forward voltage, the signal will pass through first. Again, I say that theoretically because I helped hubcap John with a Deuterino, and we were talking about the clipping options, and that's ended up with 3 clipping positions, and one of them, the middle, was LEDs, but then as you go to either side, it puts different diodes in parallel with those LEDs, and it does change. It completely changes, and on paper it shouldn't. Again, I've seen loads of people say no, whatever diode you have with the lowest forward voltage will clip first. But if you take the LEDs out, it sounds different. So it's definitely doing something. But yeah, so as I said, sorry, Timmy, it needs this bridge down the middle. When I first built my Hot Toddy PCB, I left this out, and it sounded completely different. So I measured it, and it turns out this link down the middle ends up, rather than adding completely together. So again, this is like a 914, which is about 0.6 volts forward voltage. If you added them together, it'd be 1.2 volts. It's not. When you've got this bridge down the middle, it comes out about 0.9. So rather than 0.6, 0.6, 1.2 in total, you end up with 0.9 in total, and it drops the forward voltage. And I had no idea it did that. And it wasn't until I measured it, and put the link back in on the Hot Toddy. And yeah, it makes a massive difference. As I said, it's something that's missed on the original. Something that's missed on a lot of Timmy clones as well.
Brian says that he built it and never understood this jumper. Mate, if you
honestly,
you watch that build video, you can, although I edited a lot of it out, you can literally see the moment when my head explodes.
Yeah. But yeah, so that jumper is very important in the Timmy, and it's even more important here because the VCS works in a similar kind of way. I've drawn it up slightly different on my schematic, but I'm going to do it different here. So we've got...
I'm hoping this is going to be like a variable cutout. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah. So we've got on the top, facing one way, we've got a 1N914 standard silicon diode, can be any silicon diode. And then we've got a red LED. LED. And then we've got exactly the same below it. So it's symmetrical clipping in terms of the diodes. Then what we have is a pot. But the pot is only across these LEDs. And this is why I was talking about the Timmy. So if you think when the pot is completely off, so in this case, when it's fully right, this essentially becomes a bridge. And so it will jump those two LEDs. So all of a sudden, all you're hearing is only these two diodes. The whole signal is going through these two diodes and then following this shorter path back in the feedback loop. However, when you've got that as a full resistor, the other way, you're still hearing these two diodes, they're always in, but you're then hearing the LEDs as well. And it's hard to explain. As I said, Nordlander labels it decompress. And it is that. It adds some note attack, it adds definition without, and the big thing is without really reducing distortion. So you're still getting all your distortion from these two silicon diodes, but you're almost adding in like a clean blend. It's like a clean blend without being a clean blend. And yeah, when you've got the pedal...
Why? Sorry, mate. I've got to ask. Reverse log. Why 22K reverse log? Is that just the sweep?
It's just the sweep. Yeah. On the original Nordlander, he's wired it the other way around, so he uses a 22K log pot. But again, this was one where I felt it made more sense that as you dialed it upwards, you got more distortion. Reverse log. But yeah, I highly recommend trying it. In anything that's got soft clipping, give it a go. I've built ones, so I build a kind of FET, I call it the FET breaker. It's like a heavily modified blues breaker. And I have these as MOSFETs wired as diodes and then LEDs. So you get this wonderful really dynamic feel. You can also do this in hard clipping. So again, exactly the same premise, but if you imagine this is the signal and this is ground, and you're just shorting the LEDs, and it's like how much the LED you hear. So I built an OCD style drive, which is exactly the same as this. MOSFETs here, LEDs, and everything just going to ground or VREF.
I'm definitely trying this out. Definitely.
I recommend it to everyone.
This controls it seems like a really easy way. Not easy. It is quite simple way to add like a real functional, exciting control to any pedal.
And that's it, because I see it and I kind of pitch it to people as an alternative to having a clipping toggle switch, because they're all good and well, but rather than having or you could have it like a rotary and that, so you've always got the LEDs that are being blended in, and then you're changing these ones, so you're getting like a whole range of clipping. Because John's so John's on it, I think I put 9.4s, but I'm almost entirely sure the actual diodes are Schottky diodes, so you get a lot more distortion, and then you've got these LEDs as well. And as I said, super simple hack. You can do it on You could do it on a big muff. It works on a big muff as well.
Is that the other, not the OCD, the other? What's the other gain pedal? I'm looking at it over there, but I can't read it.
Send Drive.
The purple one from Full Tone.
Plimsoll.
Plimsoll. I can see it. I can see it, but I can't read it. Is that what that little
kind of? So the Plimsoll is more.
It's definitely LEDs. It's blending in because it makes the clipping. It makes the clipping light.
That's the Plimsoll. So you've got like the signal and then ground here, and so it's having the resistor. It's like a compressor threshold. Okay. Yes, and it's adjusting how much you're hearing. When the diodes start to clip.
I was going to say, because there's another gain control that's obviously controlling another part of the circuit for.
Well, again, this is something you can do, and this is how the blues breaker works. So, well, obviously, this has got a forward voltage drop. The diodes themselves got a forward voltage drop. But if you add, it also has resistance. So it's not just, if you measure a diode, it has resistance as well. And so by adding a resistor in series instead of a diode, you can do a similar thing where you're essentially increasing the forward voltage drop. And you can control it. So you could have that as a pot, like the plimsoll, and you can dial in how much or when the diodes actually start to clip, because you're changing the forward voltage by adding resistance in series. The blues breaker, I think I feel like I need to pitch this to you more. I feel like we should definitely do a blues breaker one of these, because this has got that as well.
Oh yeah,
we do need to do that, especially as they've re-released the blues breaker and we still haven't jumped on it. So that's that.
Yeah,
maybe I need to buy an old blues breaker. If my wife Haley's watching, I'm not buying an old blues breaker.
Well, they have dropped in price since the reissues. So they're about 300 quid. Like, you can get one for about 300 quid now for an old one.
That's not too bad.
No, that's all right. I think I paid years ago. I paid 330, which I thought was a lot, and it was a lot really, because it was battered. But yeah, that's kind of about average now for a new. For an old one. And then the new one, honestly, sounds identical. Like, people will hate to hear it, but you can set them to sound identical.
Oh, no doubt. Marshall are on the ball lately. Their new ownership seems to be knocking out the park. Like, their amps are unbelievable. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the VCS control, as I call it, variable clipping saturation, because I was going to say the C word then, but I feel that's very British. But yeah, I call it that because, like with a lot of things, when you read blurbs about Japanese boutique pedals, some of the words and names they come up with for stuff, like holistic tone control and this kind of stuff. So variable clipping saturation was my kind of jokey. But yeah, it's the Nordland ODR decompressed control. Honestly, I recommend it to everyone. It is literally that simple. You don't necessarily need to use a reverse log part. I found that had the best sweep. But just 22. I think the original was linear, actually. It's just 22k lin, and it's just how you feel about it. Definitely more noticeable if you're using the pedal to push an amp. On its own, it's much less noticeable. But yeah, if you're pushing an amp or something, it's like having a clean blend without losing the distortion, which is amazing. So we've got that. So we've got our symmetrical clipping, because we've got two silicon diodes, two LEDs. They're all the same, but we've then made it asymmetrical by having R12 as 12k rather than 10k. So our voltage reference, our VREF, isn't 4.5 volts here. It's about 5 volts. So again, we're making the op amp, we're moving the headroom basically. We've then got the bass control, and this is the Timmy bass control. Again, verbatim, I've just nicked it. I use it all the time. I've changed the values ever so slightly. C3 I've changed. Here, we've got the gain filter. So again, like we were talking about with the original one, or the Tube Screamer, we've got a resistor and a capacitor from the inverting input of the op amp, and that sets our gain and the amount of bass. We then have a pot next to it and another capacitor. And at first, for a long time, I thought what it was doing was adding that capacitor in parallel. I thought it was adding C10 in parallel with C3. So, for those, again, if you don't know, if you put capacitors in parallel, add together. So, if you had 1U and 22 NF, you'd end up with 1U 22 kind of thing.
So when I originally looked at this, until you've just said that, that's how I seen it straight away. But of course, you've got resistance in the middle there as well.
That's it. And so for a long time, honestly, I thought that's what it's doing. It's adding it in parallel, and so you're blending. You're making that cat bigger. Turns out it's not doing that. It is creating a second order filter. So when we talk about filters, like an EQ filter, it's kind of that kind of thing, where it's like an EQ curve. and it's cutting the bass. First order filter, which is what a lot of things are, it's 3 dBs per octave. So say that's 1K and what's an octave, 500 hertz. It would drop that by 3 decibels. That's what a first order filter does. It's 3 octaves per decibel. It drops the volume. A second order filter, I wish I had a different colored pen to do this, but a second order filter does exactly the same thing, but much steeper. So rather than doing 3 dB an octave, which is this like very gentle curve, it starts doing it at 6 dB per octave. So it's like having a high pass filter, and rather than having a gentle curve, it's a much steeper curve. And you'd think that would cut more bass, and it does, but it mostly changes this midpoint. So here, where the mids are, or where that kind of turnover frequency is, that becomes softer, if that makes sense. So if you play a Timmy and then play a Tube Screamer, they sound completely different. And it's not just that Tube Screamer tone control, because you could then do a Zen Drive, compare a Zen Drive to a Timmy, and it's the mids that are the big difference. Like a Zen Drive feels like it's poking through in the mids again. Yeah, they make great Tube Screamer alternatives for that reason. Whereas the Timmy genuinely feels, for want of a better word, transparent. And that's what it is. It's this second order filter that we're building by adding that bass control in C10. So we're adding, if you see it on the website, so I say that like you're looking into my brain so you can see what I'm seeing. But yeah, it's essentially doing this. So you've got resistor and cap to ground, and then you've got another resistor and another cap to ground.
Yeah.
And that is a second order filter. And that's what we're creating in the Timmy bass control. This also happens in the Blues Breaker. So how the Blues Breaker tone control works is exactly the same, and you vary this one basically. The King of Tone, the tone control varies that, and then you've got the presence control, which varies that resistor. So yeah, they're very common. The Boxer Rock, the output stage for the Boxer Rock is this, so that it's supposed to sound like a speaker cab. So you see them lots of places, and that's what it's doing. So in this circuit, if you think about R5 and C3 is our standard original gain filter. So that's setting the amount of gain and the amount of bass minimum. So when the pot is fully left, you're hearing the 22 NF and 3K3 really. And then as you turn the bass control clockwise, you're adding in this second bit of filtering and that big 1 UF cap, which is then increasing the amount of bass. What I've done on the variable layout is, so as I said, John's has got this on a pot. So you can have it on a pot, works great. Or you can have it as a fixed resistor. And this is what the Lightspeed does, where rather than having it variable, just have it as a fixed resistor. And that's what I've done on, as I said, on my version of this simple drive. I've left it marked in. So I've left it on the layout as R mod and C mod. And it's this values. So if you don't want to use them, leave them out, or stick it in, and it totally transforms the pedal. It turns it into a transparent overdrive. As I said, it's affecting the mids. It fills up the low end in a different way. Lightspeed uses it. It's based on the Timmy stuff. And this is, again, as I forget who mentioned it earlier. I want to say Brian, but I don't want to get his name wrong. With a Rat. The Rat does this. The Blues Breaker does this. Probably other pedals do this. And it works really well. There is an alternative to this. The problem with this is, and as John can attest, and as we were talking about earlier, as you turn the gain pot clockwise, you're decreasing this resistance. And as we know, because we talked about it already, the gain calculation is essentially this divided by this. So if this gets smaller, we're getting more gain. So as the pot gets towards the right-hand side, and this gets smaller, you're increasing the gain as well as increasing the bass. That might be desirable, but might not be desirable.
There's an option to call that a harmonic tone control. And that's a seller on the pedal.
It really has a sweet sound to it, because that was one of the things that when I was playing around with the controls, it made me mistake it for a sustain control, because it added that kind of harmonic sustain that I would expect from a sustain control.
Yes.
You call that a harmonic tone control and sell it the pedal as a harmonic overdrive. You're selling hundreds then.
Well, I mean, this is it. They're labeled different things. Like I've seen them. One of the Thorpe pedals has it as a presence control. Some of them have it as different. You know, yeah, they're all labeled different. I say this about all my designs, that there's loads of pedals that I make that if you saw the schematic, you go, I have no idea what you've copied that from. But I know where I started, and I'm always totally honest and say, well, this is a Timmy bass, and this is this, and this is this. And maybe I shouldn't be, as you say. Maybe I should be like, nope, completely original design, mate. Came up with it off my own brain and everything.
Well, there's only so many ways you can use this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't think the guys who invented the pedals that we think are like the early pedals invented any of this. No. They're copying it from someone in a different industry, or, you know.
Yeah. There is one last thing for this then. So with the Timmy bass, which is what we've done here, as I said, it changes how the mids sit. If you like how the mids sit, but you still want a bass control, you can do what the Zen Drive does. So the Zen Drive keeps that first order filter. So you've got a fixed resistor, but then has an extra resistor as the pot. So that's how the Zen Drive does the voice control. As I say, the gain filter controls, it's both the capacitor and the resistance that adjusts the low end. So in the Zen Drive, this is 100, and this is 1K, and then this is a 10K pot. So when this 10K pot is at maximum, well, no, so it's the other way around. But yeah, when this 10K pot is at 10K, you've got 11K in series and 100 NF, and that's making your filter. And that lets a lot of bass through. And then when it's the opposite way, so when that's 0 and you've only got the 1K, suddenly it cuts a lot of bass and it's very bright. So that's a way of doing a bass control without changing the mids too much.
And Brian, oddly enough, just asked, what does an example of a harmonic tone control look like? Well, Simon's just explained it exactly that.
The bass one, yeah. I mean, there's tone controls. There's so many now, and there's so many great passive ones.
All harmonic.
Wow, yes. But yeah, so that's philosophical. For the bass control, if you like how the mids sound and you want it to kind of cut through a bit, still like kind of tube screamer hump, rather than doing the Timmy style bass, do the Zen Drive style bass where it's like a pot in series. I feel like, is that like the Roots mod as well? I think that's what that does for a Rat. It puts like a pot in series. I
can't remember off the top of my head.
No.
I've only built 2 Rats before. One modified, and one built. It's never been my circuit.
I thought I had a schematic here somewhere, but I think I put it away. I was on a quest to build a Rat at one point, and I had everything laid out, and I got sidetracked.
Yeah.
So I found a tag board layout, and then when I was looking at it, it was from the same place as that Timmy layout. And after the Timmy, I was like, no, fuck that guy, I'm not building it.
Yeah.
But no, I thought I might check it out and just go 1 for 1, because it'd be a big pedal, but a tag board Rat sounds good.
Yeah.
To me, anyway.
Well, I've got the op amp for you.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. After the McPherson thing with the making the gain control smaller, I bought one of those Mosky little Rats, like the little black pedals.
Yeah.
And it's got the wrong tapered tone control in it. And I tried hacking it years ago because it's 2 like really small stacked PCBs.
Oh no.
And I got to a point. I had a reverse log tone control, reverse log pot in that size, and again, I was in this kind of weird manic period, and I went, "Yeah, screw it, I'm going to rip it apart and see if I can fix it." And I did, and it worked fine. And yeah, I put John's LM308 in that, and yeah, made the gain control smaller. And that's now one of my favorite rats. Like, it's really nice.
And when you hear an original 308, you understand why people like give them the, and it's because they sound so crappy. They do something that no other chip does in that family of single op amps.
I wonder if that's why I like the Tate Effects Brexit means Brexit more than, because I hate rats, but the Tate Effects thing just, it sounds amazing. And I wonder if it's the op amp.
I think it's people won't notice it. I mean,
but I think it's also the caps, because Stu used like the nice like modern Wimmer caps throughout that. And earlier on, when you disappeared, we were talking about old circuits asking specifically for like Mylar, like the old Mylar caps or like ceramic caps. And as I said, the old rats are one of those circuits where when you open it up, you know, like it is like almost intentionally crappy parts. So it's like the cheapest whatever parts I could get. So there's like some old ceramics and some old Mylar and all the electrolytics and kind of crappy. So yeah, I think if on the Brexit means Brexit, I'm pretty sure Stu used kind of like nice Wimmers throughout, which like you said before, changes the tone.
Yeah. Mine's number 7 though. It's not even like the production ones. It's where he was drawing the circuit himself and etching it.
Nice.
So I'm never letting that one go. In fact, I'm trying to eyeball it on the shelf over there to make sure I ain't gone missing, but I can't see it.
Nice. So I think that's almost the end of this, because the only other change on this, I'm so sorry. The only other change on this is the treble control, which is the same low pass filter. Sorry, but with Timmy value, so it's reverse log pop, and the minimum gain is slightly different. Minimum tone is slightly different. But that's it. So, are there any questions? Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions before? I just want to kind of end this. We'll have a look at the Vero layouts, just so you get an idea. But yeah, are there any questions
from the chat?
Or from yourselves, or?
Oh man,
well, I've definitely got a few. What's your favorite op amp to put in this circuit? Every time. Last time you mentioned an op amp, and I bought 20 of them, and I'm just running out.
Right. So this guy in LA, we've ended up. I don't want to blame him entirely. I fuel it. We've ended up on these crazy deep dives of dual op amps. So some of my current favorite dual op amps, perhaps not for this pedal, but in general, the AD712, which is the original Zen Drive one. I've just discovered that. And in my in clean circuits or low gain circuits, it's phenomenal because it doesn't distort much. It's super high headroom. So I've been banging that in like the LCM. I posted one to my friend actually, he's got 3 LCMs. I posted him this chip, went, honestly, put this in your LCM. It totally changes it. So that the OPA 2132. So there's the OPA 2134, which is like the standard Burr Brown, like high pro audio nonsense, which I'm hit or miss with. But the OPA 2132 is not as clean, and I like that. Because we talk about this again. I play at home, so I test at home on a small amp that the amp itself doesn't really distort. So I like op amps with a bit of color to it. I find the OPA 2134 doesn't have any color, and he loves that because, as I said, he's big Marshalls and loud, and so having a really clean op amp, he loves that. He's been buying loads of those. But the OPA 2132. I really like, because I think it's like a nice middle ground between clarity and like having a bit of color to it. The version John Scott has got the NJM 5532 double D, which is the Japanese version of the 5532 chip. The version Joe has got is my standard JRC 4558 double D, which is like the high gain version of the 4558. the version I built for myself has got the standard, like, so 1D, so 4558D.
Yeah.
I've also been playing around. I found, because of this guy, we were buying all these kind of like old metal cans and stuff. So old metal can LM1458. Again, they were dirt cheap at the time. They're like the LM308, where they're dirt cheap. People were buying them because they were the cheapest, like whatever op amps. And there is something about how they break up. They're in the original run of Timmy's had 3 different op amps. The JRC 4550, JRC 4559D, then the same but double D, and then it went to the LM1458, and then later it changed again. But yeah, the LM1458, if you're looking for more distortion and less clarity, works really well. And one.
What about the TL072? Where's the love for the best op amp in the world?
It's weird. So I've been again. I'm currently working on a bunch of secret projects that I can't talk about for different people, and because they're all going to be kind of production, I've been looking. So I've been using like TL072s and stuff for various things, and yeah, I mean, I love the TL. I've nothing against it. I use it all the time, but I use it for clarity rather than color. Yeah, and it's a nice middle ground because it has some clarity to it. Without being too hi-fi. I've been using the TL082 a lot because that's supposedly a quieter version. I'll be honest, I've never noticed any difference in the noise. But again, if you build like, if you're mass producing something and people are saying the 82 is quieter, that I've been doing that. I think that's it. Kind of just whatever your kind of standard fare is for these things. I'm still 4558 double D still my kind of go-to for things.
I was surprised how much difference the op amp made in the Timmy that I built, like very, very much so. Because I mean, a Tube Screamer, there's a difference. I know some people say there isn't, but you know, sometimes you can think, is that psychosomatic? Maybe, but in the Timmy, it was quite palpable.
And again, it's those mids. It's because of how the mids sit. I think because it's that kind of transparent. I had to do that. Sorry. But because
aggressive with the transparent.
But because it's transparent, the op amp makes a bigger difference in my opinion, and it's clipping less as well.
So we've got some things in from the chat. Brian Denham says that he'd just like to say he enjoyed the stream and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you as well. We like to pull you back in now and again when we need our minds blown. Then we've also got Jeffrey who says, I've got more questions than you have time to answer. He's just a newbie, but thank you for sharing all our knowledge.
Oh yeah, make sure you check out Simon's post on Instagram too, because he's dropped a lot of this information there. And
and I also seen you posted a layout again for the first time in a while.
Yeah,
it was almost taking me back in time.
Well, that's it. This is where this kind of started. That I realized. So for a long time, I always say, you know, the bit I love doing is the building and sharing stuff. And I realized recently that I hadn't shared a layout in ages. I've built you can't really see it from there, but I've got like a whole. I'm trying to do this without.
Oh yeah.
So those are all the things I built in my depressed / manic depressed period between October and like last month. And there's loads, and most of them I built with the intention of sharing the layouts for. And then I realized that actually over the last couple of years, there's been loads of things like that, but I've not done it because I've been things like the Hot Toddy and the Nightingale, because I've gone down more into those building pedals, not quite by the book, but like producing pedals to help fund all the other stuff, really. I've not given this side of it as much time as I should have. So this is where this all started. Wanted to do another layout, wanted to do a schematic for it. So that's what I've shared on my Instagram is the layout for this and the schematic we've been talking about. And then there's a link in my bio, which takes you to a Dropbox link, which is all of this. So it's all these schematics and all the various layouts. One
There's
of
a
the
link in the comments as well. If sorry, in
Cool.
the description to go
Yeah.
to.
and that's it. So one of the layouts is rather than the values being on each component, it tells you what value it is in the schematic. So it's like R1, R2, and then that way, when you see it with the schematic, you can see which part is doing which thing.
Yeah.
One of my I appreciate it's getting late now. There were lots of things I want to talk about because I appreciate that you, Joe, you're not a big fan of working with Vero. I get it.
Well, no, I joke about I enjoy it, but I joke about we're like, oh no,
I think
I think
this could be something that Joe and I could do. Joe needs to come up with a tag board version of this, and I'll do one of my crazy like socketed versions or something, and maybe do some little branches out on it, and just see what we can come up with. And we should reconvene after a month or two and have some people that have built this, some of the guys that watch the video and have and just see, like, maybe we could do like what we did with the thing that we had, like the competition, remember, where we judged the when we had when we had all four of us on the round table, and like do something like that again, maybe for like one of our group sessions too. Maybe see if we've got some other people that want to come on and talk about this and like some of our discoveries, and
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, because I thought that's the whole idea of doing this was to like put the idea out there and see what comes of it.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, can you easily open the layout for just like the standard simple drive, please?
Yes, I've got it prepped, mate. Believe it or not.
Nice. Let me find it on mine as well.
Not prepped that well.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say about this, so I've said it earlier on, but I hate double links. I understand why people use double links, and a lot of, like, when you start building and you Google insert circuit name layout, there are a lot of pedals and circuits where they use double links, and for people that don't know what I'm talking about, if you think of Vero board as snakes and ladders, because it literally is snakes and ladders, you're going left, right, up and down. Sometimes people put links, two links that will share the same hole. And so it's often for grounding. So like if you've got ground on the bottom row and then ground higher up, and then you want to share it. In fact, you could see here, so on row H, you see there's two links that are on the same row. Theoretically, I could have put those both in the same hole and connected it that way. But as I said, the problem with double links is unless you're using diode legs, you normally have to make the hole a bit bigger, and it's just a nightmare. So I try to avoid it. I've also tried to avoid very long links. So I found that if you've got a resistor and you've bent the legs to put it in so that it covers 4 holes, and you snip that leg off, that will cover about 7 rows maximum. So that's what I've gone for as a maximum. So all of these links you can make just using old resistor legs. You don't need to find longer bits of wire or so I've got like loads of old solid core that I use for when you've got much longer links.
On all of my videos, if anyone's interested, if you go into the description, I've linked solid core wire there, because I think it's like £8 for the roll. That's lasted me about 2 years so far. But as you say, it's such a pain when you clip off your legs, because I always save them to reuse, and the Vero board is just like a mil too long. There's nothing more frustrating.
Well, this bollocks. I mean,
that sounded
it was an empty. It's my cup, but it's basically empty. This is a bit of Vero board I made for a different project years ago. I've drilled it wrong, but I've kept it because I use this as my measuring block. So I use this. So the little black line where my finger is here is 10 rows. So from the bottom to there is 10. I do this on all my Vero. So everything I build, the front, I always mark the bottom left corner, which is the other corner here. and I mark every 10 rows. I put a mark so that when you're looking at it, you've got a reference point. The other thing I do is when you flip it round, I also mark the bottom right corner so that you know where those things are. So yeah, so on the copper side, the bottom right's marked. On the front, it's the bottom left. So it's exactly the same point that's been marked. But again, it just helps you orientate yourself. So rows 10 and anything. But yeah, I use this. So when I need to measure a resistor, I know that if with a normal 1/4 watt resistor, if I bend the legs, it will cover 4 holes. So like this 10K resistor on that bottom row between ground and going up, that's 4. But then when you need to make longer resistors that cover more, so like 6 or 8 or whatever, I like to have this scrap bit of Aero, and I use that to measure the resistors. It seems unnecessary. You're right. You could just do it on the board. But once you start putting resistors on, if you've not got, it's hard to. It's very easy to get confused. Sorry, with what you're doing.
It's very easy to add an extra hole in by mistake.
Exactly.
When you're
anything like that. Yeah. So having a spare bit of or just like a scrap bit of Aero that you can use as a measure, essentially a measuring tape to tell you how long a resistor or something is bent. Yeah. As I said, so this is the standard layout. Hopefully, again, because I know what it looks like in real life, I can picture it in real life. But things like the capacitors are I've tried to lay out the capacitors in such a way that they're not all on top of each other. Also leaving space for standoffs. So for a long time, I didn't do this. Again, we've talked about it, that for a while I became famous for cramming as much possible into the smallest enclosures possible. And it's very difficult to mount things then. So you're using like hot glue or whatever to literally stick stuff to the side. Whereas now I use like proper plastic standoffs. So, it can, like I think, John's and Joe's. Yeah. So I've intentionally left spaces where if you look, there's like nothing else on that row or there's nothing else going left to right. And there's space where you can put a little 3mm hole and a standoff will fit through it nicely. And you use that to mount it to the board. If you're not sure what I'm talking about in terms of standoffs, this is a project. I mean, this worked actually. It was fine, but it just didn't sound right. So this is the board, but then on the back, it's got these 3 plastic, little. It's
like a spike.
Yeah, it's a little spike with a little bit of sticky tape on the back, and so that sticks into your enclosure and holds it still. So I've intentionally left space on the layouts for this. And the other thing was the R mod and the C mod. So that's what I was talking about. If you want to do the bass controls, or you want to have that fixed with a fixed resistor and capacitor, my suggestion is making the resistor 10K, make the capacitor 100 NF or 0.1 or 103, depending on how you read parts. And that gives you a really nice transparent overdrive sound. Again, with the diodes, so there's space for like having 2 on one side, 2 on the other, 1 on one side, 1 on the other, like the VCS thing with John's where it's got the diodes and stuff. Yeah.
So we've got a few things coming. Brian says he's after have the schematic. He can't work from these Vero things. I'm with you there, mate.
That's fair.
Also, there's a link in the description that'll take you to some of these. You don't need to draw it yourself, basically. Simon's put it all out in the world. If you just go in the description, I'm pretty sure I've copied and pasted it there. And Jeffrey says, great idea, and he's definitely going to use that. That's the measuring board.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. Another 3-hour-long podcast with you, mate. I love it.
Number 22.
Number 22 in the bag.
We're symmetrical today. We're clipping symmetrically on the podcast.
Everything's clipping symmetrically.
Yeah. We're actually we're going to be very unsymmetrical. And our next podcast,
we're going to be slightly technical, though.
On Tuesday coming, because I've got yet another trip to the hospital on the Monday, and we're a week late this week, so we're
We've done this before.
We're on live next week, so next Tuesday.
Yeah.
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 Adapting over
We had
that's what
like
we
some
say in the
compression
movie.
that happened. Like we sort of did like the little. I think a lot of it had to do with like scheduling. We had one, and then our guest had to cancel, so we were like, "What do we do?" And then we rescheduled. So we actually ended up doing 2 Mondays in a row. It's tradition now.
You just go with it, don't you? Yeah.
Well, in the middle of this podcast, I moved house and moved workshop, and we didn't really drop an episode. We're not doing too bad. But anyway, I've been Hello Sailor Joe. This has been an amazing episode. Thank you so much, Simon, for coming back on.
Thanks for having me. It's always good fun.
I've been John Mulholland, Space Wolf. Always a pleasure. Like just hearing you like describe these things, and I think because of your teaching expertise, you can put it in a way that makes sense to every level, which is why I think you're just, one of those electromancers that we all should be happy that we have in our lives.
Thank you. No, I say it's always fun. I always feel like I'm being boring because I'm aware that it's the party talk, isn't it? Like if you're at a barbecue and someone goes, "So what do you do?" And you're like, "I build guitar pedals." There's never a follow-up question. So so I appreciate that when it comes to this kind of stuff, my brain's just like, talk about everything.
You're going to the wrong barbecues, mate.
I really am.
Well, there's some real positive comments in the chat now. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched along, and we will see you all on Monday. No, Tuesday.
Yep. With
Thank you.
Marco
Take care.
from Slightly Technical.